Touji Akino, a 29-year-old part-timer, had just finished his work when he was suddenly summoned to a parallel universe. Upon meeting the kingdom's king, Touji was confused as he was called a hero. However, the reality was that Touji was just accidentally included, and the real heroes were the high school students that he passed by. Since Touji was just an ordinary person who got dragged in, he was naturally kicked out since there was no use for him. After being tossed out in the streets, Touji wept as he could no longer work part-time nor play internet games. After Touji finished crying, he decided to eat something while looking at the gold coins the king gave him. Seeing how appetizing the apples looked, Touji asked the store owner how much they were. Touji was surprised when an image of the apple along with its information showed up in front of him. While Touji was wondering what appeared in the window, the store owner saw that the apples got dirty and asked Touji to pay 50,000 kettles. Touji apologized before leaving, then thought that there were no similarities to the currency in his internet games. Testing out his theory, Touji stopped at a weapon shop. After holding the sword, Touji was able to confirm his theory, and then left with the sword. A woman who was carrying a box crate found Touji's clothes strange. After finding an inn to stay, Touji purchased a cloak to avoid more glares from the surrounding people. While walking in the streets, Touji was able to learn that he can use a feature which is found in one of the internet games he was playing. His first ability was Judgment ability, where he can see the information of whatever he touches. Touji also has an inventory storage, which helps him with heavy objects that he needs. Another convenient ability of Touji's was that he could summon magical creatures and produce items regardless of his level. Though his life as a gamer in Japan had ended, Touji was far happier to have a convenient cheat skill. Since he was already in a parallel universe, Touji plans to go on a carefree journey. A few days later, Touji joined a C-ranked party with their quest as their porter. Touji did not mind doing menial work since he was also gaining so many treasures on the mountain, as items and kettles were being dropped left and right. Since Touji was the only one who could see the information window, he was secretly gathering valuable dropped items. However, Touji remained at level 1 since he was not fighting any monsters. Their party leader, Aresu, decided that they would camp for now and asked Touji for the tent. After dropping the tools for the tent, Elisa shared how impressed she was with Touji's skill as it was really convenient. Fury, another member of the party, told Elisa to help set up the tent since Touji had already done his part by carrying their luggage. Meanwhile, Kura-san, the last member of the party, was picking up twigs for their fire. Touji was happy after being called a specialist by Elisa. Since Touji's objective was to go on a journey to his heart's content, he was sure that if everyone knew of his power, they would surely look down on him. Touji was surprised when Aresu asked if he had heard of the hero summoning news in Depuri. The closest neighbor to the Demon Lord's country was Depuri. After a large battle, both countries had a non-aggression pact which produced peace for both sides. However, the country of Depuri claimed that they summoned heroes as a contingency plan against the Demon Lord, when in reality they summoned the heroes just to outshine other countries' battle strength. Relieved that he was kicked out by the king, Touji wished for the parallel world to continue its peaceful reign as he wanted to travel more and more. Realizing that Touji may be tired, Aresu apologized for taking his time and asked him to take his rest, which Touji also appreciated. As the party restarted their journey, Touji didn't get any sleep at all. The reason was that they were attacked by a group of gray wolves. Fortunately, the party was unharmed thanks to the dropped items they had acquired. Elisa assumed that their target must be nearby since they hadn't set up their camp in enemy territory, but were still attacked. Their target was the gray wolves, and they had learned that many of them were transforming since their territory had expanded. For the sake of a rare drop called a strengthening scroll, Touji decided to continue even though he knew he would be killed if left behind. While scouting from above the trees, Fury instructed everyone to stop since there were a bunch of gray wolves ahead. When Fury mentioned that they would soon encounter the gray wolves in 5 seconds, Elisa immediately distanced herself and began casting fire spears. As Elisa assumed that her spell had taken out some of the gray wolves, she did not expect one to sneak up on her. As the other members tried to warn Elisa, she was fortunately saved by Kura-san. Seeing that the pack of gray wolves had caught up with its leader, Touji was frightened when a gray wolf tried to lunge at him. When Fury and Aresu retaliated, they had a hard time landing an attack because of the gray wolves' unique bodies. Touji was pleased to hear that the wolves had unique bodies, as it also meant they could yield rare drops after defeating them. In order to go on a journey on his own, Touji had to become very strong first. To increase his level, Touji had to take on the dangerous risk of fighting magical creatures. After some thought, Touji decided he must first acquire weapons that he could equip to increase his status. The strengthening scroll was necessary for his upgrade as it could help him increase the status of his equipment. As Aresu reminded everyone to stay alert, Touji tried to secure a drop when a wolf almost bit his hand. Kura-san then asked Touji to stay behind him at all costs. Scared, Touji decided to postpone retrieving item drops and prioritize defending himself as he pulled out a sword from his storage. Fury, who was still atop the tree, saw movement in the grass and alerted everyone that a wolf was in front of Kurusun. After a failed sneak attack from the Grey Wolf, it decided to run away. However, Kurusun had no plans of letting the Grey Wolf escape. Using his skill Shield Bash, Kurusun was able to immobilize the Grey Wolf. Seeing the opportunity created by Kurusun, Aresu struck the leader with his skill, while Elisa burned the wolf pack with her magic. Seeing the sea of fire in front of him, Touji couldn't help but be amazed by his party members. But what excited Touji the most was the gigantic amount of item drops that lay in front of him. While sifting through the item drops, Touji cried as he hadn't expected to obtain a strengthening scroll. After noticing the value of the wolves' corpses, Touji didn't expect to gain 2 valuable weapon drops. After a few days following the Grey Wolf incident, the number of requests to carry luggage had increased, which helped Touji save enough money. Now that his priority was increasing his level, Touji was worried about engaging in any fights since he was just level 1. While trying to increase his level, he also picked up a herb collecting request to make some achievements in the Adventurers Guild. After hunting down a couple of rabbits, Touji finally reached level 5. Based on his internet game knowledge, certain skills would be released upon reaching level 10. After a day of increasing his level, Touji still couldn't forget how terrifying the Grey Wolves were. Remembering how the new Destiny party had a hard time defeating the Grey Wolves, Touji was determined to increase his level quickly. As he checked the items he picked up during the Grey Wolf quest, Touji read that he needed to become level 10 first in order to equip the items. Touji thought that he might still be able to equip the items regardless of his level since he was not in a game. Pleased that his theory was correct and that he was able to equip the item, Touji was immediately disappointed when he saw that his stats did not increase. Touji then brought out the 3 strengthening scrolls he had picked up. While thinking of how the value of the weapon would increase, Touji also considered that upgrading the weapon could also lead to failure. To test it out first, Touji tried using the 60% success rate scroll. Touji was happy and relieved that the sword did not break after being upgraded. After upgrading the sword, Touji was excited to use the longsword since its attack power had increased by 3 points. While collecting herbs in the forest, the new Destiny party accidentally bumped into him. Aresu then mentioned that they were on a subjugation quest, as they were informed that a goblin settlement was nearby a village. Touji was immediately frightened upon hearing about goblins, as he had heard that they were tough monsters to defeat even among C or B ranked parties. When Fury showed off their new cloak, Touji was surprised and asked if it was made from the Grey Wolves that they defeated. Touji was impressed by the cloak's unique trait when Fury mentioned that it could erase one's presence for a certain period of time. Seeing that the equipment he obtained had a much lower level, Touji guessed that he would have to personally defeat the monster in order to gain higher quality items. Aresu, who wished to give a cloak to Touji, gave him money instead since he could not equip the cloak due to its high-level requirement. As Touji and the new Destiny party parted ways, Touji thought that forming his own party someday might be a good idea. A few days later, Touji had just finished eating his meal. He somehow reached level 9 and was excited with the thought that he would soon be level 10. Touji realized that ever since he was summoned, he had been very active. This made Touji think of taking a vacation. When Touji heard about the king's soldiers, he was curious about what they were looking for. He was surprised when he heard that the soldiers were looking for him. Wondering what the people from the castle wanted from him, Touji realized that the information about his inventory skill may have reached the castle, which enticed them to look for him. Not wanting to return to the castle, Touji asked the shop owner to use his back door to escape. The owner did not mind but wondered what Touji had done to have the soldiers look for him. As Touji responded that he had no idea, the other adventurers backed him up as they were proof that Touji was a good guy. Glad that some adventurers were siding with him, the owner immediately pushed him towards the back door to escape. After exiting, Touji guessed that he might be in trouble and decided to collect his belongings for now. Touji did not expect that his schedule of moving to another city would be rushed. Touji thought that if he was captured, he would surely be enslaved by the heroes and lose his freedom. As Touji headed to the inn, he was surprised when he saw soldiers in front of the door. Since there was nothing important at the inn, Touji decided to leave the country immediately. While trying to escape, Touji ran into the new Destiny party. When Aresu mentioned that Touji was being chased by the royal soldiers, Touji responded that there was a misunderstanding. Seeing Aresu's expression, Touji wondered if the new Destiny party was trying to capture him. During Touji's escape from the capital city, he ran into the new Destiny party. Wondering if they were trying to capture him, Touji was surprised when they offered him help instead. Aresu told Touji that they had just accepted an escort job that would take them outside of the capital. When Aresu mentioned that smuggling Touji outside of the capital was no problem, Touji couldn't help but cry. grateful that the new Destiny Party would bother to help him escape the authorities. As the group met with the merchant Meyer Albert, Arisu apologized for the delay they had caused. Upon hearing Meyer's voice, Touji thought her accent was similar to that of Osaka Prefecture. When Arisu introduced Touji to Meyer, Touji felt a little hurt when Meyer mentioned that she had no plans to pick up strays. When Arisu insisted on bringing Touji, Meyer then warned Touji of how dangerous the trip was and that she couldn't pay extra. But when Touji mentioned that he just wanted to tag along and did not need any sort of payment, Meyer's attitude immediately changed. When Meyer mentioned that she was planning on making 3 trips to the nearby towns, Touji took the opportunity to make a good impression as he took all of Meyer's luggage. As the group was about to head out of the city, the soldiers stopped them for inspection. When the soldiers reported to their chief that they hadn't found anything on the loading dock, the chief noticed that Kurasan's bag was a little unusual and asked what was inside. Kurasan lied and told the chief that it was their tents. However, the chief insisted on looking through the contents of the bag. As Kurasan could no longer give excuses, Touji thought that his escape had failed. Worried about the new Destiny Party getting involved in his mess, Touji planned to give himself up. However, the soldiers changed their minds as they chased after a man who they thought was Touji. Outside of the capital, Meyer explained that his company recently purchased a rare otherworld garment. When Touji mentioned that he sold his old clothes for 3 silver coins, Meyer became enraged upon realizing that she paid too much for the clothing. Curious, Touji asked Meyer why she purchased his clothes. Meyer shared that she had an interest in rare and unusual things. As a merchant, Meyer saw value in Touji's clothes since they were different and decided to purchase them with the thought of gaining connections. Touji was grateful to Meyer for devising a plan to help him escape. When Arisu told everyone that they would reach the next town by tomorrow, Touji was curious about the map and asked Arisu where he got it. While explaining to Touji how to obtain a map, Touji held the map and was surprised when a window showed up. Touji did not expect that he would also have his own map. As everyone set up camp, Touji was a little disappointed that he would have to eat an unappetizing meal again. Wondering when he would reach level 10, Fury sensed something coming from the southwest. Based on what was on the map, Fury assessed that they could be facing goblins. Seeing the opportunity to level up, Touji pulled out his sword. Touji was surprised when Arisu told him to stay back as it was dangerous. As Elisa pushed Touji inside the carriage, Touji touched Elisa's face and was surprised upon seeing a game status next to Elisa's face. Touji became confused when seeing the life bars beside Elisa and an invitation to join their group. When Touji checked his status, he was in total disbelief that he had gained enough experience points to boost his level. Upon discovering another insane skill, Touji decided to keep it to himself for now and try not to use it against his friends. Arriving at Fergie Town's merchant guild, Touji told Meyer that he had finished unloading the whole shipment. Assuming that they were of the same age, Meyer told Touji that there was no need for them to be formal. However, when Touji revealed his age, Meyer was in total shock as she thought that Touji was just 19 years old. Curious about the enhanced longsword, Meyer asked Touji where he got it. Having difficulty explaining, Touji told Meyer that he bought the sword from a local weapon shop. However, Meyer did not believe Touji as she saw the sword's true value. When Meyer explained that weapons' value could be increased by using cheap materials, Touji was surprised by a different way of increasing a weapon's stats. After learning a new way of earning big profit, Meyer asked Touji if he could accompany her halfway through the journey. Confused, Touji still decided to help Meyer out as they planned to meet at the gate the next day. Happy with Touji's decision, Meyer shared her excitement of making profit along with Touji. Touji felt bad for lying to Meyer. He wondered what Meyer would think if she found out about his absurd gaming status skills. Because of his conscience, Touji decided to hire an escort group from the Adventurers Guild and left Fergie Town before noon. Since the next town was a 3-day walk, Touji hired an escort group called the Iron Will Army. The escort's leader, Bundle, reminded his men about safety and not letting a single monster cross their path. Touji was puzzled as to what the Iron Will Army was doing, as they were going out of their way to kill monsters that weren't even bothering them. However, Touji didn't want to voice his opinion since the Iron Will Army had agreed to his request. After seeing the loot drops from the killed monsters, Touji's mind immediately changed. He not only gained item drops but also experience points just by being with the Iron Will Army. When a summoning card appeared in front of Touji, he remembered that he had already leveled up some time ago, granting him the ability to summon monster partners. Though the monster called Kobold did not look very strong, Touji was still pleased that he had leveled up. There were 6 classes of monster types. If one collected 100 cards of the same monster, that monster would evolve to the next class, and special abilities would be gained when it became a rare monster. Since he was already at level 10, Touji decided to store the summoning card in the monster inventory book, planning to summon the monster when he needed it. Touji did not expect that he could also name the monsters. Wondering what name he could give the monster, Touji ended up deciding on the name Pochi since the monster looked a lot like a dog. Touji was alarmed when Bundle shouted that they were facing a horde of bandits. The other members of the party were confused as to why there were bandits in the area when they were still not far from the Daepuri Kingdom's capital. Admitting his fault, Bundle reassured Touji that they would live up to their name. Touji now regretted hiring the Iron Will army as an escort. While Bundle was raising everyone's morale, the bandits were making fun of them since Bundle also mentioned that they had failed to protect a minor lord. The bandit leader asked for an expert opinion about the levels of the Iron Will army. When the bandit mentioned that most of the members were level 30, the bandit leader felt insulted, as he could not believe that a C-ranked party would contain low-level adventurers. As the Iron Will army boasted their equipment and experience, the bandit leader laughed at them, revealing that they had already claimed the lives of countless travelers and adventurers. Touji and everyone in the Iron Will army were frightened after being called little boys playing as heroes by the bandit leader. The bandit leader gave a signal which alarmed Bundle as he saw multiple silhouettes in the distance. Confused at what was going on, the bandit leader told Bundle that they were now being surrounded. The bandit leader offered a deal. The Iron Will army would live to see another day as long as they surrendered their equipment and handed over Touji to them. As Bundle's pride took over his decision, he immediately had second thoughts when the bandit leader asked if he was ready to die for his morals. Bundle was afraid that their record in the guild would be finished if they listened to the bandits' demands. Surprised at how dumb the Iron Will party was, the bandit leader suggested that they report to the guild that they were knocked out and had their equipment stolen while being unconscious. Touji despised the bandits for suggesting a scam to the Iron Will party. However, Touji did not expect that the Iron Will party would listen to the bandits' suggestion as they were already stripping down their equipment. After being abandoned by the Iron Will party, the bandit leader asked Touji why he needed 6 bodyguards. When Touji tried trading his life for his belongings, the bandits immediately asked him to show everything he had. Touji was left with no choice but to reveal his secret to the bandits and give them everything he had. Tied up inside the cave, the bandit leader was impressed with Touji's ability, as he could see that his business would soon pick up. After celebrating for finding a jackpot, the bandits slept for the rest of the night. Wondering if the bandits were really asleep, Touji did not expect that the bandits would use wooden scarecrows to fool the Iron Will army into thinking that they were surrounded. Since no one was keeping watch on Touji after removing the longsword from the inventory, Touji summoned Pochi. He told Pochi not to make a sound and instructed it to cut the ropes. When Touji tried to take back his belongings, he accidentally kicked a glass bottle which ended up breaking. Without a second thought, Touji and Pochi ran for their lives away from the cave. Knowing that they would be dead meat if they were caught again, Touji wondered if there was another way out. Suddenly, Pochi let out a howl which confused Touji at first, but he was surprised after seeing many kobolds emerging from the bushes. Touji was impressed with Pochi's quick thinking of calling for backup. Since kobolds were not very strong monsters, Touji was sure that Pochi's trick would not be able to hold off the bandits for very long. Planning to get to a road and call for help, Touji was surprised when he saw a carriage in front of him. To his surprise, Meyer did not expect Touji to pop up in the middle of the road. As Touji apologized, Meyer wanted to know if Touji knew that the royal guards were turning the capital upside down just to look for him. When Meyer verified the completion of the new Destiny Party's escort job, she was surprised when the front desk told her that Touji had put out a request for an escort to Landpeace. After giving Touji a stern lecture, Meyer then asked why he was on the run from the royal guard. Touji could tell from Meyer's expression that she would not accept any secrets or lies. Meyer was in total disbelief upon learning all of Touji's abilities, from his inventory box to enhancing equipment. Surprised that Touji was able to do so many amazing things, Meyer was jealous at how easily Touji could become rich. After Touji told Meyer everything, she was able to verify the suspicions Touji had about the hero group in the royal capital. From what Touji learned, the so-called heroes did not have any of Touji's skills. Since not a single one of them had an item box, the group was stuck carrying their own things. With unbalanced members and no support, the king wanted to bring Touji back to the castle and make him the hero group's luggage holder. Determined to get out of the country and enjoy his freedom, Meyer suggested to Touji that they partner up since she was headed to the neighboring kingdom of Tagari. Since Touji was left with no other options, he and Meyer ended up becoming partners. Seeing how skilled Meyer was with business negotiations, Touji was pleased that Meyer would give him a fair offer. Knowing that he owed Meyer big time, Touji was worried that his bad luck would cause trouble for them. However, since Meyer still decided to help him, Touji promised her that he would do his best. Arriving at the town of Landpeace, Meyer told Touji that he could load the next shipment for the next town after he finished unloading and eating their lunch. Touji still could not let his guard down since they were still too close to the royal capital. Touji asked Meyer for a favor. Since his belongings were mixed up with the bandits, he ended up bringing everything with him. When Touji mentioned that he was planning to sell all of the items, Meyer laughed at the thought of stealing from thieves. Accepting Touji's favor, Meyer did not expect to see so many items. Trying to confirm with Touji which were his belongings, Meyer was told that everything she was seeing was the entire contents of the cave. Wondering how many people got robbed by the thieves, Meyer asked Touji to get a cup of coffee from the cafe since sorting the items would take a lot of time. While drinking coffee, Touji did not reveal to Meyer that only a small portion of the pile belonged to the bandits, as the rest were drops that Touji had been hoarding. After Meyer sorted and sold everything, she then mentioned that Touji netted some really big coins. Confused, Touji asked Meyer what she meant. Meyer then explained that Touji had a lot of great wolf and other animal furs that had no damage, which even the average pelts sold for a good price. Pleased that the items were in perfect condition, Touji was confused when Meyer showed him a very heavy bag. Meyer then whispered to Touji since she didn't want other people to hear the total Touji received. When Meyer told Touji that the bag was worth 180 million kettles, Touji was in shock as he asked Meyer if she was kidding. But when Meyer handed him the list of everything that was bought, Touji became nervous as he knew that he would be a constant target for every thief and conman if his secret were to be revealed. The two then decided to leave the town after having their lunch. While on their way to the Dapuri-Togar border, Touji decided to try his hand at crafting, which was another one of his skills that had advanced after reaching level 10. There were 5 different classes for the crafting skill: weapon production, alchemy, accessory production, ores, and herbal. Alchemy crafting was a very important skill, especially when creating potions. Though it was important to have a good supply of healing potions and antidotes, gathering the right materials for alchemy and weapon production was just as important. Crafting included the ability to convert certain materials into usable compounds and ingots for production. The results were highly usable and profitable potions, weapons, and tools. Testing out his crafting skills, Touji used the flower of Majoran that they got from item drops and turned it into Majoran flower oil. The flower oil, which they had distilled down to its purest form, amazed Touji with how he converted flowers instantly. With the use of alchemy and a little bit of tinkering, Touji then turned the flower oil into a grade 10 healing potion. Since a grade 10 potion was the lowest level of potion, Touji could only make 1 bottle of potion for every 5 parts of flower oil. After witnessing Touji's abilities herself, Meyer still could not get over how easily Touji could make things, which she found really ridiculous. Seeing Touji's naive reaction, Meyer explained that alchemists studied and practiced for many years just to make the same level of potion Touji made. Meyer was baffled at how easy it was for Touji to make the potion, as he did not need any long periods of measuring, calculations, or intricate rituals. Touji was aware of the craftsman grading system, where the higher one's level was, the more powerful their potion would become. At the moment, Touji was aiming for the Takumi, or artisan level of crafting. When Pochi called for Touji's attention, Pochi showed him glass bottles. This gave Touji an idea to fill up the bottles with potions. Touji did not expect that Pochi would be a very smart kobold. Touji then wondered if, since Pochi was a summoned monster, would Pochi be smarter than a wild kobold? Seeing how Pochi overfilled the bottles, Meyer found Pochi very cute when following orders and decided to forgive Pochi for spilling the potion in her carriage. After Touji consoled and gave instructions, Pochi became more determined. Seeing Pochi's determined look, Touji could not help but agree with Meyer about how cute Pochi looked. Touji planned to aim for higher levels so that his crafting grade would improve. Meyer then told Touji that they were now almost at the trading base of the world, William City. Once they passed the city, they would be in Togar territory. As soon as Touji and Meyer reached the Togar territory, Touji could finally relax for a while. Touji smiled as he hoped that his new life in another world would begin in earnest. During their visit to William City, Touji outfitted Pochi with clothes so he would stand out from other wild kobolds. However, since having a kobold running around the city would draw attention, Touji decided to keep Pochi in the monster inventory for the most part. As the shipment was soon to be picked up, Meyer informed Touji that registering 2 passes for the Togar Nation would take some time. Meyer suggested Touji explore the city and relax while she processed the passes. Touji was amazed at how busy and full of people William City was, as he had expected from a major trading city. Shop owners were enticing customers with their products. Surprised by the number of shops along Touji's path, he wished he could visit all of them. When a man called out to Touji and offered a special otherworldly treat, Touji immediately recognized the smell of yakitori. Amazed that the nation of Togar had soy sauce, Touji asked for 10 skewers. The shop owner assumed Touji was a big eater for ordering so many, but Touji planned to store the remaining skewers in his inventory since any food placed inside would not spoil. When the shop owner told Touji the total cost was 5,000 kettles, Touji was taken aback by the expense. Sitting on a crate, both Touji and Pochi drooled over the appetizing skewers they had bought. After instructing Pochi on how to hold the skewers, they started eating. With just the first bite, both Pochi and Touji immediately fell in love with the food. After finishing their meal, Touji decided to shop for some extra weapons and equipment since he still had some time before meeting with Meyer. Looking for handcrafted equipment, Touji was surprised to find a sword upgraded to level 7. When the shop owner asked Touji if he planned to purchase the sword, he suggested Touji get something with a magical enchantment rather than something requiring more skill to use. The shop owner explained that during the manufacturing process, a magic effect could be added to improve the item's overall performance. There are some methods of enchanting items. The more processes and enchantments one uses, the higher the stats will adjust accordingly. However, there was still the chance that the enchantments might lower the item's stats by as much as 50%. Touji found the shop owner's information very helpful and asked if everyone knew about it. The shop owner responded that it was common knowledge. However, he further explained that only on extremely rare occasions did adventurers find a magic spear, sword, or even a piece of armor. After learning how much more valuable rare item drops were than enchanted items, the shop owner even told Touji that he would purchase a high inclusion level of 3 elements. When the shop owner showed Touji the two-handed magic sword of Laspian, Touji immediately recognized its true value as a latent equipment. Touji ended up buying a one-handed sword with a high upgrade level, and met up with Meyer afterwards at the border. Touji thought that crossing the border into Togar was difficult. Fortunately for Touji, Meyer was well known and a trusted member of the Merchant Guild. As travelers had to follow the Dragon's Scar Road, Meyer asked Touji if he would be okay sitting on the back. After moving to the back, Touji heard a commotion indicating a golem attack. Surprised, Touji told Meyer that they needed to take cover. However, Touji became confused when Meyer told him that there was no need for them to take cover. Meyer further explained that the route they were taking was the shortest and most widely used trading route to Togar, which meant that there were adventurers and an anti-monster army employed to take out any monster that would show up on the route. Since the area was a huge spawning ground for golems, Meyer explained that the demon dragon Gaia, said to have visited the valley and destroyed the landscape with its enormous earth magic. Since Gaia's magic was so potent, the remaining traces seeped into the ground and merged with the rock and soil, which resulted in the golems periodically spawning. While watching other adventurers clean up the defeated golem, Touji was easily lured by the item drops. Touji got down from the carriage and ran towards the item drops that were being piled up. As Touji felt like winning the lottery, Meyer did not expect to see such behavior from Touji and asked Pochi if it was Touji's normal behavior. At the resting area of the Dragon's Scar, Meyer was surprised to learn that Touji was a golem addict. Embarrassed, Touji reacted wildly as he told Meyer that he just likes golems. While Meyer was changing her view of Touji, Touji forgot that he was the only one who could see the item drops. After acquiring a bunch of important items, Touji felt bad that Meyer could not see the item drops like he could, as he was sure that Meyer would also act the same if she could see the items. While Touji was running around, he forgot that he left Pochi outside. When he asked Meyer if Pochi caused any trouble, Meyer responded that instead of causing trouble, the adventurers rather found Pochi really cute and thought that Pochi was the pet of an eccentric golem lover. As they continued their journey in the morning, Meyer and Touji once again encountered a golem. But Touji now controlled himself and again gained a load of item drops. After informing Touji that they were about to be finished with their trip, Meyer then welcomed him to the kingdom of Togar and pointed out the border city of Sarto, which was Meyer's hometown. When Touji learned that it was Meyer's first return home in 7 years, he could not help but feel like an old companion. As soon as they got to Sarto, it would be time for Meyer and Touji to part ways. Noticing Touji's expression, Meyer teased him as she guessed that Touji would miss her. Since the merchant job had finally finished, Meyer asked Touji to drop by her parents' house sometime to have dinner. Since Touji would have to register at the local inn for a few days, he accepted Meyer's offer and told her that she could invite him anytime. Touji felt relieved upon arriving at the city of Sarto, as he now planned to start his new life. Since Touji had already registered the city map with his own mapping function, his first task was to find a room at an inn. After taking his time to decide, Touji chose a higher grade room with a monthly rent. Pleased with the room's appearance, Touji then released Pochi to relax. Happy that Pochi was comfortable on the couch, Touji remembered his old apartment and how cramped it was. Next on Touji's agenda was to strengthen his equipment. He was very excited to try out the scrolls he had collected on the equipment and weapons he had bought in William City. While assuming his level was 12, Touji was surprised to see that his level was 21 instead. Confused since he didn't remember hunting any monsters since leaving Fergie, Touji then remembered that he had an ability that could help increase his level. Because of his experience stealing ability, Touji was able to increase his level while being escorted by the Iron Will army. Even the bandits that held Touji hostage contributed to his experience while he was tied down. Touji then felt remorseful and leaned towards the idea of deleting the function after learning that he had also stolen experience from the New Destiny party. Touji received a warning when trying to delete the function. Touji hesitated as it turned out that if he continued removing the function, then he would have a hard time leveling up. Shifting his focus away from the function, Touji then concentrated on strengthening his equipment. As a standard practice for all gamers, Touji augmented the equipment that he would use for everyday purposes. After finishing upgrading his equipment and making a batch of potions, Touji's next task was the main event. Moving to the backyard of the inn, Touji summoned a golem. Seeing how big and strong the golem was, Touji decided that it would be his new tank. When Touji tried to evolve his new golem, he was surprised when he suddenly received notification that it would cost him 10,000 kettles to evolve the golem. Judging by the golem's evolution, Touji estimated that each level would cost 10 times the amount of the previous one. Adding to the expensive evolution, it also only gave a 50% success rate per evolution. Touji assessed that evolving a normal type to a rare type would be worth it, as it would unlock special skills. After naming the golem Takito, Touji then evolved it to a rare type. Excited for the special skill, Touji was left disappointed after seeing Takito's evolved skill. Touji immediately apologized to Takito as it hurt his displeasing opinion towards its skill. The inn owner thought Touji was weird as he saw Touji apologizing to a golem. After storing his newly made potions in his item box, Touji decided to visit Meyer. But Touji was shocked as he did not expect Meyer to live in a mansion. Upon checking his map, Touji found out that the mansion was the home of the Albert Family Chamber of Commerce, the biggest company in all of Sorta. Upon entering the mansion, an old man immediately greeted Touji and asked him what he wanted. When Touji mentioned Meyer, the old man's expression immediately changed as he corrected Touji, asking if he was looking for Miss Albert. Seeing Touji being interrogated by Sebas, Meyer laughed so hard before asking Sebas to stop. After apologizing for Sebas's behavior, Meyer asked Touji if he had brought something that could bring them a big profit. When Touji mentioned that he had made 1,320 potions, it took Meyer some time to process the quantity of potions Touji had. After regaining his senses, Meyer then asked Touji to give all of the potions as she would buy them all. Meyer bought Touji's entire stock of potions at a low price, which Touji still earned a huge profit since the manufacturing cost was zero. After selling the potions to the client, Meyer and Sebas treated Touji to dinner, and even gave him a tour of the city. A few days after Touji visited Meyer, Touji and his summoned monsters had been fulfilling simple job requests from the guild. Touji's purpose in taking on odd jobs was just to boost his level at the guild from F to E rank. The Sarto Mountains are surrounded by huge forests with strong monsters living in them. Such a predicament resulted in a priority for recovery potions for adventurers who ventured out into the forests. Material collection for potion manufacture is also done by adventurers hunting in those forests. Grateful towards Touji for accepting the request, the owner of the Pine Foods restaurant told him that whatever he wanted to eat was on the house. The owner explained that since he was constantly working in the kitchen, he couldn't find the time to fix the holes in his restaurant. Seeing the restaurant's menu, Touji felt like the entire menu of Japan had been transported to another world. When the owner noticed that he had given the wrong menu, he apologized to Touji and tried to provide the correct one. However, the owner was surprised when Touji insisted on eating the food that was on the other menu. After receiving the 2 beef bowl specials, the owner was surprised as the beef bowls were finished in just a matter of seconds. Pleased with how delicious the food was, the owner felt that his pride as a chef was strengthened after receiving compliments from Touji and finishing the food. The shop owner used to be a former B-rank adventurer and solo hunter, and was called the Wandering Chef Adventurer. After bringing rice to the city of Sarto, the owner did not expect that rice would not be a popular food staple. Since the owner's shop was located in a remote area, he was disheartened when his son told him to give up on the business. Touji found it unacceptable since the main food of the restaurant was vital to a Japanese person. Determined to prevent the restaurant from closing, Touji told the shop owner that he would eat his dinner in his restaurant and that he would also visit the restaurant more frequently in the future. Touji's promise gave relief and happiness to the shop owner. After lunch, Touji continued to work on the F-rank handyman requests. He also tried to think of a way to make rice dishes more popular, but nothing came to mind. Eating at the same restaurant for his dinner, Touji wondered why people weren't eating the rice dish more when it was really good. When another customer noticed Touji eating so many rice bowls, he got curious and asked what the food was called. After Touji told the man what the dish was, he was surprised since he had never heard of it even after eating at the same restaurant for over a month. Touji then noticed that the menu on the table was different from what he had seen earlier that day. When Touji asked the owner why he wasn't showing the menu that had the rice bowls, the owner responded that the menu was intended for soups and bread items. The owner added that he would only show it if the customer requested it. The shop owner explained that when he presented the rice bowls for the first time, he was heartbroken when some customers would not finish the rice. However, after another customer ordered a set of beef bowls, the orders for the beef bowls kept on coming. After thanking God for the food and help, Touji visited the Sarto Adventurers Guild and obtained his updated guild card. After learning the updates for his new rank, Touji was surprised when a window showed up showing that the people he knew before were now all dead. Feeling a little down after learning that his old companions had died, Touji decided to leave the building. However, the guild receptionist called Touji's attention since there was a request she wanted Touji to consider. The receptionist then explained that the request had been backed up for some time and the reward was 50,000 kettles in addition to the guild request fee. The request was for the inspection and sanitation of the sewers beneath Main Street. The receptionist added that if he ever finds any monsters, they would most probably just be slimes, which are the weakest and least threatening monsters. After roaming the sewers, Touji was annoyed since the whole place was filled with slimes. Touji misjudged the request since it seemed like a simple job, and the smell wasn't too bad. While scrubbing the walls of the sewer, Takedo accidentally created a hole. As Takedo tried to cover the hole, Touji was surprised by a terrible stench. Touji was even more surprised when he saw tons of sewer slimes. Sensing fear from Touji and Pochi, the slimes then attempted to attack them. Fortunately, Takedo was there to protect them. Accidentally slamming the slimes, Touji's eyes sparkled upon seeing tons of item drops that came from them. While Touji and Takedo were busy taking out the slimes and collecting item drops, Pochi, on the other hand, was the only one working on the guild request. Searching for more slimes to squash, Touji directed his light towards the darker part of the tunnel. However, he was surprised to see a huge slime in front of him. The king slime was furious at Touji for taking out all of the smaller slimes. Confident in Takedo's strength, Touji instructed him to smash the Slime King. However, they were surprised when Takedo's punch ended up getting stuck in the Slime King's mouth. Realizing that physical attacks wouldn't work, the Slime King retaliated and pushed Takedo with 3 slime attacks. Touji was surprised as he did not expect the Slime King to have such powerful attacks. Though the Slime King had high resistance to physical attacks, it was still a monster that could be defeated. After placing Takedo back in the inventory monster book, Touji then called Pochi as they were about to face the Slime King. Touji and Pochi felt disgusted attacking the soft slime. Every time Touji sliced the Slime King, it released a foul odor and lots of filthy liquids. Touji noticed that the Slime King's volume was decreasing with every slash he made. Realizing that swords were very useless, Touji then gave Pochi a bucket and instructed it to remove as much liquid as possible. Happy that their new plan was working, Touji was annoyed when the Slime King absorbed the smaller slimes and got bigger again. Angry from frustration, Touji noticed a semi-transparent round ball in the center of the slime. Realizing that what he saw was the central core of the Slime King, Touji theorized that damaging the core may help them in defeating the Slime King. When Touji instructed Pochi to fetch him the core, he already expected that Pochi would not listen since the stench was unbearable. Touji also realized how unfair his instruction was, as Pochi was like a dog with heightened senses of smell. Smelling the terrible stench would have been difficult for Pochi. Left with no choice, Touji planned to use his enhanced sword to defeat the Slime King. Diving inside the Slime King, Touji felt disgusted while swimming inside the slime. Not wanting to drown inside the Slime King, Touji swam around until he finally grabbed the Slime King's core. The Slime King had a surprised reaction as Touji had already stabbed the core with his enhanced sword. When the sword pierced the Slime King's core, the Slime King instantly exploded. As Pochi and Takedo watched Touji in a daze, wondering if he actually defeated the Slime King. Upon seeing tons of item drops in front of him, Touji was shocked when he saw the Slime King summoning card, which was an epic grade monster. Touji also gained a magic shield along with the summoning card. The rest of the items drops were kettles and scroll rewards. Despite being part of a tough and smelly fight, Touji was still glad since the payoff in the end was huge. Touji then hunted down the remaining slimes for more items and completed the request. After Touji got out of the sewers, he immediately headed towards the guild's receptionist to confirm that he had finished the request. Since the receptionist didn't want to talk to Touji, the head guildmaster was instead called out to meet Touji. Because of the unexpected subjugation, all of the slimes along with the Slime King would just be considered as a bonus for the extra work. In the end of the request, Touji was able to net 90,000 kettles for the job. The day after the sewer slime and Slime King subjugation, Touji found himself at his apartment, not expecting to fall asleep while in the middle of making potions. The most common drop items for slimes were bottles of low-level recovery potion, similar to an energy drink. Back at the inn's yard, since Touji obtained the summoning cards for both normal slime and the Slime King, they decided to hold a meeting to determine what their names would be. After giving the instructions, Touji felt bad seeing Takedo writing its name on the ground since the pencil was too small for it to hold. After receiving the papers for the names, Touji was confused by the names chosen by Pochi and Takedo, which he later decided to just accept. Touji told everyone that he would fold each of the name suggestions into a paper airplane. After throwing the paper plane, whichever plane lands the furthest wins. In the end, Takedo's suggestion of Tyrol was the winning name for Touji's new slime. After summoning the slime and naming it Tyrol, Touji did not expect Tyrol to be cute since it was covered in sewage before. Touji's next task was to upgrade Tyrol to a rare type by using 100 slime summon cards and 10,000 kettles. After upgrading Tyrol, Touji was happy to learn that Tyrol's new ability offset Taquito's automatic 10% summon damage. Touji could now see the birth of the healing slime. In the games that Touji played, 10 hit points per 10 seconds wasn't much, but it had the probability of becoming a lifesaver. Touji's next summon was the Slime King, for which he already had a name in mind. When Touji was about to summon the Slime King, he was surprised when the front desk receptionist of the inn asked him to stop. The receptionist then told Touji that his golem had damaged the backyard, and told them to fill in the holes Taquito made. After apologizing and instructing Taquito to fix the mess it made, Touji decided to put a hold on summoning the Slime King for now. Now at the Sarto Adventurers Guild, Touji wondered what quest he should take for the day. Touji then heard the other adventurers talking about the hero party from the Depuri Kingdom. Eavesdropping on the conversation, Touji was able to learn that the hero group that was summoned had settled the border dispute. When Touji learned that the hero group was training inside a dungeon, he felt a bit ashamed as he himself knew that he needed to raise his levels as well. As the other adventurers wondered what happened to the fifth member of the hero group, Touji decided to not pay any more attention since he had his own problems to deal with. After informing the guild receptionist that he would be taking the goblin subjugation quest, Touji was told that all E-ranked adventurers would be alerted of any goblins approaching the city. The receptionist then advised Touji to not go too deep into the forest unless it was necessary. After giving Touji the brief overview of the goblin subjugation quest, the receptionist then asked a personal request, which Touji needed to take a bath before reporting in. In the forest, Touji asked Pochi if it caught any smell. Touji was told by the receptionist that adventurers should rely on their hunting and tracking skills in order to bring down their prey. However, since Touji's skills mostly involved potion making and equipment enhancement, he had to rely on Pochi's keen sense of smell to pick up the scent. Curious as to why Pochi stopped, Touji wondered if they had finally found a goblin. However, Touji was surprised after seeing many item drops. Touji assessed that someone else took the herbs and plants and what was left were the item drops he was seeing. Touji then wondered if he should continue risking his life as an adventurer when he could easily obtain the items he needed. He then changed his mind as he did not regret becoming an adventurer, as he may not be able to meet Taquito, and as his attention was being called by Pochi, Touji asked if they smelled goblins now. After taking out a goblin, Touji was pleased with the results of the equipment upgrades. Touji felt a little nervous taking on the goblin subjugation quest, as it was his first humanoid opponent. Assuming the quest would be difficult, Touji did not expect it to be manageable. He guessed it was the guild's way of grooming newcomers who could handle goblins. After finishing the subjugation quest of 3 goblins, Touji decided to spend his afternoon in the forest collecting drops from other adventurers. When they saw a newly hatched bird on the ground, Touji, along with Pochi and Taquito, decided to help the bird by putting it back in its nest. After putting the baby bird back, Touji was suddenly attacked by the bird's mother. Pochi helped by speaking with the mother bird. Though Touji wasn't sure how Pochi cleared up the misunderstanding, he decided to leave the matter as Pochi had become good friends with the mother bird. Returning to his task, Touji did not expect another bird to kill itself by running toward Taquito. Horrified by what had just happened, Touji's attitude immediately changed after seeing the item drops, especially the rare summoning card. As Touji heard a group of people coming toward his location, they were surprised to see the bird they were following stuck on Taquito's body. After the man asked Touji if he was the one who caught the bird, they regrouped and discussed their next plan. When the woman suggested they inform the buyer that the bird got damaged while trying to escape, Touji shared his opinion that they should be truthful with their employer. Touji's response enraged the woman as they were hoping to capture the bird and get a huge amount for it. Ignis, the long-haired woman, expressed her disappointment toward their leader, sharing how she no longer wanted to sleep in the stables. Frey, another member of the group, tried to calm Ignis down but ended up being berated. Touji was in total disbelief at how disorganized their party was. Bray, the leader of the party, encouraged the group to be positive and tried to make amends with Ignis. However, Ignis further insulted Bray, which made Frey angry as she asked Ignis to apologize. Touji did not want to be involved with the party after witnessing their chaotic outburst, deciding to just give them the bird's carcass. Hearing Touji's words, Bray immediately grabbed his hand, very thankful for Touji's generosity. When Ignis apologized for Touji having to give up the rare bird, she was relieved upon learning that the bird wasn't really a big deal for him. Happy that there were still good-hearted people around, Ignis expressed her gratitude toward Touji before leaving with her party. As Pochi and Taquito felt happy seeing the party makeup, Touji decided to end his task for the day and head home. On his way back, Touji added his latest addition to the summoning book. Touji had no need for the bird carcass since he had an intact bird inside his book. Additionally, he was very happy to have finished the goblin subjugation quest. At the Sarto Inn, Touji reached level 8 with his artisan skills, thereby earning the title of Master Artisan. Touji has been diligently working every day, and his potion-making skills have also reached a high level, particularly in herbal and alchemy classes. While potions are typically used for immediate effect, specialty drugs can provide a latent additional percentage effect in certain situations. In other words, the higher the status, the greater the effect. Given Touji's current status level, any benefits he produces would be relatively modest. Thus, Touji decided to focus on crafting specialty drugs that could impact factors other than status. Although achieving this goal was admirable, Touji faced a challenge due to the lack of ingredients for the potions he wished to make. After completing his potions, Touji then focused on enhancing his equipment production skills. During a visit to Meyer's home, Touji became engrossed and ended up forging more than 50 swords for Meyer to sell. Having collected numerous ores during their initial expedition down the Dragon's Scar, Touji utilized these ores along with his equipment production skill to craft enhanced swords. Touji was excited by the prospect of reaching master level in equipment production, as it would enable him to create weapons and gear with latent potential. Despite some viewing Touji's skills as cheating, no one knew that the weapons he created were far superior, possessing the capability to unlock one's potential with different combinations. After momentarily losing focus, Meyer reminded Touji that she was the exclusive seller of his products. Upon evaluating the weapons created by Touji, Meyer informed him that his fine swords could fetch as much as 6,000 kettles each. Touji was further surprised when Meyer suggested that he might be able to make at least 100,000 kettles. Now at the abandoned mine northeast of Sarto, Touji and Pochi visited the area to collect more ores. Touji then summoned Takito and his new bird summon Collect, instructing Collect to gather valuable resources. Led by Takito to a significant ore deposit, Touji expressed satisfaction, only to be startled when a rock monster, a Goron, suddenly moved and attempted to roll towards them. The Goron was about to strike Touji and the others when it was easily stopped by Takito with its hammer. Touji was relieved that his decision to equip Takito with a steel hammer was correct. Not wanting to be left out of the fight, Touji called Pochi and urged him to assist Takito, leading them to use their pickaxes against the Goron. When Collect attempted to join the fight, Touji grew worried for its safety and instructed the bird to remain on the sidelines and focus on collecting resources. Returning his attention to the Goron, Touji was elated upon discovering a silver ore, although he was concerned that defeating a lesser earth monster might yield fewer drops. Collect's ability compensated for any potential shortfall. Pleased with the bountiful haul they obtained for the day, Touji found the location promising and planned to revisit it soon. As they headed back home, Touji was surprised to hear a scream. Contemplating whether to investigate, Touji ultimately decided to do so, especially since Pochi was eager to help. Touji was glad that he had kept the cloak of the hidden wolf, as it made it hard for monsters to detect his presence. Passing by a fire inside the forest, Touji wondered if there was a raging fire demon in the area. Hearing a call for help, Touji was surprised to see a group of orcs pinning down someone. Touji immediately ducked his head when he saw an orc turn towards his location. He then remembered that the orcs couldn't detect his presence due to the effects of the cloak. Though he sought advice on what to do from Pochi, Touji already knew that fighting outnumbered was pretty much a death sentence. Even though the situation was harsh, Touji had no choice but to keep quiet and wait for the orcs to leave the girl. When the orcs carried the girl away, Touji recognized her as Ignis, a member of the party he had met earlier. Wondering what had happened to the rest of Ignis's party, Touji instructed Collect to look for the members of Ignis's party and guide them towards the orcs' location. After getting captured, Ignis was being held at an abandoned woodcutter's shack. Lying on her side, Ignis was surprised when Touji suddenly showed up and opened the door. Confused as to how Touji found her, Ignis asked him why he was there. Touji explained that he was just nearby when he heard her scream for help, relieving Ignis that something nasty hadn't happened yet. Touji asked Ignis if she could stand up. However, when Ignis tried to stand up, she was in serious pain as it looked like her ankle was broken. Searching through his inventory, Touji gave Ignis a potion after tying up her ankle with a stick. Ignis then remembered the guard outside the shack and asked Touji what had happened to it. As Touji explained that Takito had knocked out the guard and the other orcs were still in the forest, Ignis warned Touji that they had to leave immediately. Touji did not know that orcs could smell individuals from far distances and attack in groups. Ignis further explained that orcs do not attack if they are outnumbered. Unfortunately for Ignis, she had encountered the orcs while she was alone. Touji tried to calm Ignis down and reassure her that her party members would come and get them. However, to Touji's surprise, Ignis and her other party members had a falling out after receiving their small share of the reward. Ignis was then annoyed as she remembered how Bray had given half of the reward to the girl's parents' bakery, cursing Bray for splitting the money even further, despite not having much money for themselves. While cheering Ignis up, Touji told Ignis that they had to get going before the orcs returned. However, Ignis no longer had the motivation and told Touji to leave her be and just save himself. Upon opening the door, the two were speechless after seeing a horde of orcs in front of them. Scared of seeing an orc army, Ignis wished that her magic staff hadn't broken so she could have fought the orcs with fire magic. When Ignis asked Touji if he had a magic staff she could use, Touji assessed that his skills might be good enough to create a simple magic staff. Since Touji did not have the firepower to take on many enemies, he had to depend on Ignis's magic. While hastily creating a magic staff, Touji hoped that his familiars would buy him enough time to finish the magic staff. Opening up his monster inventory, Touji summoned his new monster, King Cayman, the Slime King. He hoped that King Cayman would be able to hold off the orc army long enough for him to finish the magic staff. Surprised to see a Slime King in front of them, Ignis asked Touji how he was able to summon such a powerful monster. When King Cayman communicated with Touji, he wondered if this was how prey felt when facing a giant predator. Instructing King Cayman to smash the orcs thoroughly, the situation changed as the orcs were now very frightened. Shooting powerful slimes at multiple orcs, Touji was shocked since he did not remember the original Slime King being that powerful. As the orcs called for more backup, Ignis became more afraid as the number of orcs now could be considered beyond a disaster level. Not wanting Ignis to get excited and aggravate her injury further, Touji handed her Pochi to calm down. Touji's trick proved to be effective as Ignis was now focused on Pochi's cuteness. Meanwhile, King Cayman was pummeling the orc army left and right. Touji was frightened at how King Cayman was enjoying himself killing the orcs. After a few moments, King Cayman finished the fight and completely massacred the entire orc army. Sensing that something was coming, Ignis immediately recognized the monster as the Orc King. The Orc King cried its eyes out after witnessing the total annihilation of its entire army. Seeking revenge, the Orc King leaped towards King Cayman, trying to take it out. Worried for King Cayman's safety, Touji warned his summoned monster of the danger. However, both the Orc King and Touji were surprised when the Orc King's attack was ineffective. Grinning at the Orc King as it looked down on its attack, King Cayman then unleashed multiple slime attacks towards the Orc King, ending its life. As the Orc King's body fell, Touji did not expect that the fight would be uncontested as King Cayman overpowered the Orc King. After thanking King Cayman for saving their lives, Touji was still a little scared since King Cayman was really big and imposing. As King Cayman jumped away, Touji saw King Cayman's writing telling Touji that he had fun fighting and wanted to fight more. After putting King Cayman back in the monster book, Touji decided to spend the next few days making a new wand for Ignis instead of trying to kill everyone in front of him. Touji did not expect that King Cayman would be a battle junkie. Still, Touji was grateful towards King Cayman since it did save them from the army of orcs. Touji then told Ignis that before they head back home, they first have to finish collecting the materials. The next day after the orc incident, Touji was at the inn pondering what he should do next. Touji didn't want to admit that King Cayman's rampage was a huge success. However, as an E-rank adventurer, Touji was not expected to be able to defeat an army of orcs. If Touji were to report the incident to the guild, he would surely stand out too much. Back when Touji and Ignis were collecting materials, Ignis was surprised to learn that Touji had no idea what to do with the orc bodies. Ignis explained that monster materials were valuable, such as the orcs, which were primarily a source of food. Touji could not believe that orc meat was something that others ate. Ignis further explained that monsters like orcs were no different from farm animals or beasts hunted in the wild. Orcs in particular only exist to kill male humans and rape human females in order to breed. It was fortunate for Ignis that Touji had heard her call for help. Orcs are usually hunted for their meat and certain body parts, but Touji still wondered if it was okay to eat orc meat. Other than their meat, there wasn't much left to salvage after King Cayman pulverized all of the orcs with the exception of the Orc King. Touji was even more surprised when Ignis specifically asked for the Orc King's testicles since they were a highly valued aphrodisiac. Back in the present time, Touji was surprised when Pochi asked to use the kitchen as it wanted to cook the orc meat. Not wanting Pochi to eat the orc meat, Touji promised Pochi that he would buy normal ingredients for Pochi to cook and eat. Looking at his inventory, Touji discovered that he could automatically dismantle monsters into materials. He then wondered if he could do the same with the orc bodies that he had stored. Testing out one orc body, Touji was pleased to find that his theory was correct as he was given options to either turn the orc body into orc meat or orc-based oil. Though the orc meat looked similar to normal meat, Touji still felt disgusted by it. Touji decided to view the orc bodies he had collected as a way to save up resources, and decided to just break down the rest of the orcs into meat and other materials. Finished with the orc business, Touji called out for Pochi so that they could have their lunch. Touji forgot that Pochi had already left with the piece of pork steak he had made. Judging by Pochi's actions, Touji already had an idea where he was headed. Out in the streets, Touji was surprised after seeing the restaurant repainted and cleaned. As the shop owner meant to speak with Touji, he interrupted the shop owner first and asked if he had seen Pochi. The The shop owner pointed inside the restaurant and explained that Pochi had helped the restaurant during the lunch rush. The shop owner expressed how he wished that Pochi was a full-time employee since the customers loved the food and also Pochi. Seeing many customers, Touji asked what was going on as there had been an increase in the number of counter seats. The shop owner explained that ever since his rice bowls became popular, he came up with the countertop idea. While ordering a beef bowl special, Touji saw how vital the countertop idea was, as it helped the restaurant serve the food faster for the customers who had already paid for their meal ahead of time. Touji felt that the restaurant was becoming like a fast food chain rather than the restaurant he was used to visiting. When Pochi served the beef bowl rice, Touji asked if Pochi had served him the meat that he had taken earlier. The shop owner interrupted the two as he asked Touji where Pochi got the meat from since the customers loved it so much and even described it as monstrously good. He then expressed how grateful he was towards Touji and Pochi, as if it weren't for them, then the restaurant would have closed a long time ago. Touji didn't want to take the credit. However, the shop owner explained that because of Touji's thirst for the beef bowl rice, people took notice of the food and started ordering from the rice bowl menu. After learning that the shop owner's son was no longer worried about his father, Touji was pleased to know that everything he had done for the place was worth it. Happy with the restaurant's outcome, Touji thought to just ignore the details and enjoy what's in front of him. Touji was now focused on living freely in his new world with his equipment manufacturing skills. He then thought of the hero group, as he was sure that the members also had their own cheat skills, and probably had a higher level than Touji. Visiting the Adventurers Guild, Touji was informed by the receptionist that he was being promoted to D rank because of the results of his previous quests. Pleased with the news, Touji did not hesitate to accept the promotion. Staring at his guild card, Touji was happy that his hard work had borne fruit since he was now a D rank adventurer. Not only was Touji a D rank, but his level was also over 30. This meant that Touji's crafting skills had also risen in rank. In the world Touji was in, if an adventurer reached the C rank, then he would be seen as a trusted adventurer. Touji was now excited to upgrade his equipment, suited for a D rank. After getting his promotion, the receptionist then asked Touji if he wished to take his first D rank quest. Touji happily accepted the offer. Meyer didn't expect Touji to accept her request to resupply the North Border Station. For Touji's first D rank request, he was more pleased knowing that he would just be doing the same thing as his previous job of carrying luggage for adventurers. Meyer warned Touji that the mountain road towards the station was very dangerous at times. She then shared how the hero group of the Dapuri Kingdom was doing lots of monster hunting, which upset the balance of nature, and now many monsters were fleeing towards Togar territory. Touji had no idea that because of the commotion started by the hero group, the soldiers had to guard the borders, which left the guild to deal with transporting goods and supplies to those areas. Having horrible flashbacks of the orc army and king, the last thing Touji wanted was the hero group pushing another horde of rampaging monsters his way. Before receiving payment for all the potions and weapons he had made, Touji learned that most of the weapons he was transporting were made by him. Myers asked Touji once again if he was fine doing the request alone, as she could tell that trouble seemed to follow him. Touji was confident with his first D-rank mission as he had already marked the location on his map. He also felt secure knowing that soldiers were in the area, which meant that the chances of getting robbed by bandits were pretty low. When Meyer reminded Touji of the time when he was escorted by the Iron Will army, Touji immediately felt nervous. Reminding Touji of the location and if he had brought enough rations, Meyer wondered if she could get another adventurer to go with Touji so that she wouldn't have to worry. Reassuring Meyer that he would be fine alone, Touji interrupted their conversation as he personally offered to be Touji's bodyguard. After Meyer acknowledged Pochi as Touji's bodyguard, the two then headed out for the North Border. At the North Border Station, the soldiers became alarmed, but after Touji explained that they were delivering supplies from the guild, the soldiers' worry immediately changed to relief, as they couldn't believe that Touji brought all of the supplies they needed. After unloading all of the items he brought, the soldier heard Touji's stomach growling. Accidentally hearing Touji's stomach, the soldier then pointed the way to the dining hall and told Touji that he could freely use the kitchen and make whatever he wanted. Arriving at the dining hall, Touji heard someone calling his name. He was surprised that it was Ignis. After telling Ignis that he was doing a resupply request, Touji then asked Ignis the reason why she was at the North Border. Ignis responded that she was also doing work as part of the surveillance and subjugation team for attacking monsters. Touji asked if she was okay to do such a request since she recently had her ankle broken. But when Ignis showed her healed ankle, Touji was very surprised. Ignis then shared how she got the best treatment that the Orc Testicle could offer. The healing clinic that Ignis visited to have her ankle fixed was an organization of healers that treated injuries like a hospital. Pochi then kept pulling Touji's coat, which reminded him of the reason why they visited the dining hall. Inside the kitchen, Pochi had a disappointed look after seeing the ingredients the station had. Since Pochi preferred to cook meals using fresh ingredients, a hungry Touji couldn't help but just bring out the ingredients he had. Ignis did not expect that Touji would let Pochi cook, as it never crossed her mind that a kobold could cook. In comparison to Touji's skills, Pochi was much smarter than him as a whole. Pochi could cook, clean, and do domestic chores better than Touji ever could. For a slob like Touji, having Pochi was a godsend. Even though Touji was proud of his skills, he still couldn't help but feel a bit inferior to Pochi. Touji was surprised after seeing the pork cutlet meal set made by Pochi. Ignis instantly loved the meal after eating just a piece of the meat. Taking back her words, Ignis was now convinced that Pochi could really cook. Though Touji couldn't explain how it was possible for Pochi to learn cooking, he paid no attention anymore to details since having Pochi around made Touji's life a bit more bearable. As the other soldiers were lured by the delicious smell, that reminded Touji that he hadn't eaten yet and told Pochi that he was hungry. Pochi immediately went to work and cooked not just for Touji, but also for everyone who was hungry. The next day, Touji was trying out the new skill he gained after reaching level 30. The skill was called the Special Enhancement function. Touji had only been doing normal enhancements, which depended on the number of upgrade points that an object possessed. The difference with the Special Enhancement function was that it required money to work. After trying out his new Special Enhancement skill with the sword that he normally enhanced, Touji was able to get good results as all the stats of the sword got boosted. Equipping the sword that Touji just enhanced could give anyone a great advantage. Testing out the limits of his new skill, Touji was able to reach the quality of a weapon that most C-ranked adventurers love to have. Touji reminded himself that rare items have higher enhancement levels and that there's only so many times an object can undergo special enhancement. The big downside to special enhancement was the cost, as the enhancement for level 21 to 25 already cost up to 20 million kettles. Touji was wary of the possibility that the enhancement and strengthening would fail, as the higher he enhanced the weapon, the success rate went lower. When Pochi handed Touji his sandwich, he couldn't believe how rich the sandwich was. Touji was impressed with Pochi for making a teriyaki sandwich. Though the sandwich was so delicious, Touji was still disappointed since he still had to look for strengthening scrolls in order to upgrade an object. Leaving the station, Touji was still consoling Pochi, explaining that he did not mean to insult his food. Touji thought of bringing him to the Donbury Pine as Touji hoped that the owner could cheer Pochi up. Touji noticed something from afar. Upon seeing the books that were being sold, he was surprised that the book was about the hero with the harem group from Dapuri. Touji was in disbelief that the kingdom of Dapuri would actually spend so much money just to make the heroes look good. While thinking how the hero group was doing many irresponsible things, Touji thought that he could dismantle the books just the same as how he dismantled the orc bodies. After purchasing a book, Touji was able to confirm his theory after dismantling the book into blank sheets. Since it was a lot easier to upgrade and enhance things with scrolls, as they use fewer materials, Touji decided to focus on leveling his alchemy really fast. The shop owner was surprised when Touji told him that he would buy all of the copies of the new heroic legends. Visiting the Adventurers Guild, Touji saw that there was a swarm of people in the lobby. It was announced that there was an urgent request for all adventurers, since there was a huge monster stampede in the mountain region. Though the mess was caused by Dapuri's heroes, Touji saw it as a good opportunity. Touji then walked up to the receptionist and told her that he wanted to sign up for the Monster Stampede subjugation party. Touji, along with his summoned monsters, sat in the middle of the camp. He still couldn't help but feel nervous, even though the only reason he volunteered to be on the front lines was because of the potential for item drops. Touji's attention was directed to the commotion nearby. It was caused by Ignis and her former party, who were trying to get her to join the team again. Though the party offered bread for Ignis's return, she felt insulted and still blamed the party for her demotion to D rank. After lecturing Bray and Frey about sharing the work and rewards, Ignis then told Frey that she never once liked her parents' tasteless bread. Since Ignis was the kind of girl who speaks her mind and doesn't hold back, Touji was confused about why Ignis was headed his way. After greeting Taquito, Ignis immediately got annoyed when Taquito suggested that she needed company. Touji knew Ignis's hardships and understood why she refused to rejoin her old party. To comfort Ignis, Pochi gave her stew, which Ignis appreciated. Not wanting to owe Pochi as compensation, Ignis handed Pochi money, which Pochi ended up giving to Touji. He then remembered back at the North Border Station that the soldiers paid good money for the food that Pochi cooked. Touji wondered if setting up a diner and making Pochi the head chef was a good idea. When Touji noticed that Bray and his party were staring at him, he felt nervous and decided to stay away from them for tonight and tomorrow. Morning came, and the adventurers were already up, taking on the rampaging monsters. Touji did not expect that the adventurers would treat the stampede like a big festival. Seeing the item drop in front of him, Touji couldn't help but join the front lines. When one of the adventurers got hurt, he was first confused, seeing a kobold selling cheap recovery potions. However, after taking them, the adventurer thanked Pochi as he recovered quickly. When an adventurer called out for B-ranked adventurers to face the Wyvern, the Iron Will Army volunteered to take action and deal with the Wyvern themselves. A member of the Iron Will Army was surprised when Touji showed up trying to sell some potions to him. Touji still remembered how the Iron Will Army abandoned him and gave him to the thieves. In addition to taking their experience points during the stampede, Touji plans to charge the Iron Will Army 10 times the amount that they would purchase from him. Touji spent most of his time running around selling potions and picking up item drops. By the end of the day, most of the monsters of the stampede were taken down. In front of a bonfire, Touji and his summons were warming themselves. Exhausted from the fight, Touji was relieved that he could finally relax. For a day's work, Touji was not disappointed since he managed to reach level 36. He was also able to clean up when it comes to items and kettle drops, as he could see a big payday ahead. Hearing Ignis's voice asking him what he was talking about, Touji was surprised and tried explaining himself. Ignis then told him that there was no need for explanation as she didn't care much. Ignis was impressed with Touji's work during the stampede, selling cheap recovery potions which helped the adventurers win the fight. Remembering how Touji saved her, Ignis told Touji that he really was a good person. Instead of being happy, Touji felt guilty since his purpose during the stampede wasn't to help others but rather to collect item drops. As the first day of the stampede had ended, Touji was sure that they would be fine since they still had many healthy adventurers with them. Stampedes of monsters are considered inherently dangerous. Adventurers on the front line risk their lives because it's a job that needs to be done. If a stampede is left unchecked, it could wipe out a whole village. Ignis shared her experience during the first day, explaining that she didn't do much and spent most of her time enjoying the feast. She then vowed to do her best next time. Touji was surprised that Ignis was pretty pumped up. Ignis explained that it was time for her to make some money. She also saw the stampede as an opportunity to go back up to C rank. Ignis used to be a pretty good C rank when she was a solo adventurer. However, things started to go bad for her when she ended up joining Bray's group. Using her new magic staff that she bought, Ignis felt that she could get her old rank again with the stampede. After having her meal, Ignis left for work and bid farewell to Touji and his summons. Knowing that Ignis was able to raise her level quickly by herself, Touji felt that she would be a perfect fit for their group, as she was already pretty close with Takedo. However, Touji could only help with restoring life points if they ever got in a pinch. The stampede would last a total of 4 days. Luckily for everyone, the stampede ended with 0 casualties. Touji also made some serious money during the subjugation quest, as he received a total of 128 million kettles. On top of the money, Touji also reached level 39 and acquired a bunch of valuable item drops. Even if he eats like a king for a long time, Touji's wallet would not get any lighter. Starting with his goal for the day, Touji plans to break down all the extra and duplicate drop items. Drop items are basic items with a set amount of points. Enhancing or strengthening item drops was not possible. Touji decided to just break them down into materials, but Touji was more surprised when he saw that the item had an Excel equipment effect. Excel effects are like a blanket effect for all statuses for each diamond or special enhancement level. The same with the monster and item enhancement, the Excel effect does not come cheap. Naturally, the success rate for the Excel effect will decrease the higher one goes until it's 50%. This means that after special enhancement level 8, there's a good chance of blowing a lot of kettles if the attempt fails. As Touji wondered when did the drop items become so complicated, he decided to keep the rare drop item for now and dismantle the less valuable ones. Waking up after a nap, Touji didn't think that he would oversleep. Feeling hungry, Touji still plans to eat lunch even though it was quite late for it already. After waking Pochi up, the two headed outside looking for food to eat. All of a sudden, Touji's attention was being called by an old man. The old man was presenting to Touji a magic kitchen created by a legendary sage. The old man added that it was constructed by the finest artifacts recovered from deep within the dungeon. Enticed by the magic kitchen, Touji asked the old man how it works. Seeing that Touji was interested, the old man showed a demonstration on how to turn it on. Touji was impressed since it didn't need a fire or water stone. The old man mentioned that the device was valued at 20 million kettles, but as a special sale for the day, the old man was willing to lower the price to 5 million. Even though Touji could afford the magic kitchen, he was still hesitant to make a major, which made him wonder if he really needed it in the first place. Seeing that Touji was having a hard time deciding, the old man gave a suggestion to Touji. The old man will not take the 5 million all at once, but instead would take a down payment and then they can set up a contract at the Merchant Guild, which Touji can pay the rest in installments. After hearing the old man's suggestion, Touji started thinking that he may really not need the magic kitchen after all. However, since Pochi seemed to want it, Touji decided to take the magic kitchen. All of a sudden, someone called Touji's name asking him to stop. Touji was not expecting to see Meyer. As Meyer evaluated the magic kitchen, She then asked the old man what type of scam he was trying to pull since the magic kitchen wasn't made from dungeon artifacts. Meyer then accused the old man of selling a common type of kitchen model that even had a firestone with terrible quality. After lecturing the old man on the ethics of being a merchant, Touji was in total shock as he could not believe that he was almost suckered into paying 5 million edels for a piece of junk. The old man then called Meyer an amateur merchant and stated that he was a very important street vendor of the Albert Family Chamber of Commerce. The old man then threatened Meyer of banning her from the Merchant Guild for life. Hearing the Albert name, Meyer asked the old man if he was close to the CEO, Sakai Albert. When the old man responded that he was, Meyer's frown changed immediately to a smile as she asked the old man its name. The old man told Meyer that his name was Vaju, and that he happened to be close to Sakai Albert. Thinking that Meyer understood the situation, the old man then told her to forget about the matter and walk away. Meyer then pretended to know Vaji and dragged Touji away from him. Meyer's action enraged Vaji since they were in the middle of a business transaction. As the two were walking away from Vaji, Touji asked Meyer if she wasn't worried about Vaji's threats. Meyer was not worried at all and shared that she already has the vendor's name. Meyer then explained that Vaji should be more scared of her since threatening the daughter of Sakai Albert was a crime, which would get Vaji permanently erased off the merchant roster at the guild. Touji was in shock as he did not expect that Meyer could be a scary person. Meyer then asked Touji why he wanted to buy something so expensive, to which Touji explained that he wanted to buy it for Pochi since he likes to cook. Surprised to learn that Pochi can cook, Meyer then told Pochi that if he really can cook, he can use the kitchen at her house. Meyer then asked Pochi to cook them a meal. Excited to taste Pochi's cooking, Meyer suggested that Pochi use her family's magic kitchen, as it contains all of the latest magical cooking equipment. The family cook noticed that it was already lunchtime and asked Meyer for some time to cook. However, since Meyer wanted to taste Pochi's cooking, she told the family cook that Pochi would be serving them lunch. Curious as to who Pochi was, the family cook was shocked to learn that Pochi was a kobold. Seeing the family cook's puzzled look, Meyer reassured him that the kobold in front of him could really cook. As Pochi stared at the kitchen for some time, Touji realized that Meyer's kitchen was totally different from the beef bowl kitchen that Pochi was used to. When Touji asked the cook to teach Pochi where the ingredients were and how to use the equipment, the cook was surprised, as he assumed that Touji and Pochi already knew how to use the equipment. When Touji explained to the cook that they hadn't encountered advanced kitchen equipment and were a bit lost, the cook understood and proceeded to teach Pochi how to use the equipment. Curious about the magic kitchen equipment, Touji asked Meyer if she could explain it to him. Meyer summarized to Touji that the equipment was simply magical devices based on discovered artifacts. When Touji jokingly shared how he had no idea what artifacts were, Meyer realized why Touji was almost scammed. Based on Meyer's explanation, artifacts are ancient magical devices created long ago by wise sages. The devices that people use in the current age are based on those original magical artifacts like the kitchen. Meyer shared that they can't duplicate the original artifacts, however, they can create lesser copies that are pretty much the same thing. In the beginning, magical artifacts were treated like national treasures. But things changed when the mystical northern nation of Gillis caused a magical revolution. Although the copies are inferior to the originals, they started to circulate quickly due to their low cost of production and price. Thinking of the magical revolution, Touji wondered if it was the same as the Industrial Revolution. Since Touji was interested in magic devices and their methods, Meyer shared how new inventions can make a person very rich. As the two continued their conversation in the dining room, Touji was attracted by a delicious smell and realized that it was time for them to eat. As Pochi cooked them a delicious beef bowl rice, the two could not help but drool over it. The family cook admitted that he was both shocked and impressed by Pochi's skills and agreed that Pochi was indeed different from other kobolds. When Touji took a spoonful of the food, he was surprised. Touji then immediately gobbled down the whole dish as it was very delicious. Meyer and the family cook had the same reaction and ate the food like there was no tomorrow. Meyer was so amazed by Pochi's cooking that she asked where Pochi learned to cook. Touji then asked Pochi if he learned how to cook by observing the owner of the Donbury Pine, which Pochi confirmed. Meyer then shared how she heard that the Donbury Pine was on the verge of shutting down, and then suddenly they became famous. Touji revealed that Pochi and he were frequent customers and that Pochi helped the owner in the kitchen a lot. Meyer then suddenly asked Touji if he wanted to go shopping with her. Curious as to where they would be going, Touji accepted the invitation. After thanking Pochi for the meal, Meyer revealed that she planned to buy the best magic equipment for Pochi. After shopping, Touji finally bought Pochi the best magic kitchen. Although Touji gained a lot from making potions and item drops, he still thought that he paid too much for the equipment. When Pochi insinuated to Touji that he wanted to start cooking already, he also asked if Touji could use his inventory box with the equipment. Touji agreed with Pochi's request but reminded him that he could only hold food and not his kitchen. After coming to a mutual understanding, Touji patted Pochi's head as he looked forward to Pochi's next meal. After a few days, Touji and his summons headed to a mine to look for more raw ores and materials that he could craft. Touji planned on making high-level gear in order to gain experience for his craftsmanship. Mining craftsmanship allows Touji to use even residual material from exhausted veins. When Pochi noticed something behind the bush, Touji guessed that it was a monster and instructed Pochi to attack. With one attack from Pochi's weapon, the monster was defeated in just a second. Pochi was using a special crossbow that Touji personally made for him. The crossbow had been strengthened and enhanced to the max. Touji also created a golem hammer for Goleo. Touji admitted to himself that Pochi's weapon was much stronger than his own gear. Thanks to Touji's overpowered crafting skills, he could enhance their gear to insane levels. In addition to finding raw materials, Collect was also their team's scout, which greatly helped Touji and his other summons find more raw materials and avoid any danger. When Touji heard Collect's signal, he wondered if Collect had found something. Touji was then led to a cave, which made him wonder if the cave was some sort of hidden dungeon. After Collect confirmed that the stuff Touji was looking for was inside, Touji no longer hesitated, took out a lamp and entered the cave. As Touji wondered why there was a cave in such a remote area, he opened his map functions to survey the area. After confirming that the cave was indeed a dungeon, Touji was immediately afraid, since his experience in dungeons was that monsters are usually stronger. When Pochi pointed his crossbow at a group of goblins, the goblins whispered to themselves at first before running away. But they were easily killed off by Pochi and his crossbow. Since Touji discovered a newly formed dungeon, he was relieved to know that there were not many levels or rooms to explore. All of a sudden, Collect started acting out. After Touji noticed Collect's behavior, he followed Collect's intuition and started mining the wall. To Touji's surprise, he couldn't believe his luck when he saw both gold and mithril ores. Realizing that Collect could locate the rare materials he needed, Touji instructed Collect to look for more gold. Both Goleo and Pochi observed Touji mining the walls and finding more materials. The two were eventually called by Touji to help him collect the materials. Touji's plan to dig for more loot was maintained for the next dozen hours. Touji couldn't contain his happiness after collecting tons of rare materials. When the group finally arrived at the bottom level of the dungeon, Touji assumed that the door in front of them led to the final boss. Since they were in no rush, Touji and his summons decided to eat first before moving on with their plan. As the group set up the table for their meal, unbeknownst to them, they were being observed by someone. Drooling over the food that Pochi cooked, Touji immediately prayed so that he could eat. However, he did not expect that someone was already eating his meal. Touji's surprised reaction startled the small woman on his plate. When Touji asked the woman to identify herself, she scoffed and told him that she was the dungeon core. Touji was puzzled, as it was the first time he had heard of a dungeon core. He then assumed that the small woman was the dungeon boss, since the door behind him led to the dungeon boss. As Goleo and Pochi prepared themselves for a fight, the small woman immediately asked them to stop. However, Touji was not convinced and instructed Goleo to smash the small woman. After dodging Goleo's attack, the small woman asked for a chance to explain herself. Touji did not want to believe a word she said and still instructed Goleo to strike again. The woman pleaded for them to stop and mentioned that she would give Touji some orichalcum. Hearing the name orichalcum, Touji instructed Goleo to stop. Orichalcum is considered the strongest and rarest of metal ores. Stuff made from orichalcum is Meister level, and people would pay a lot of kettles for a weapon or object crafted from it. After settling down, the woman continued to eat the cookies that Pochi made and found them very delicious. When Touji asked the woman to give him the orichalcum, she responded that she would give it, but she wanted to test Touji's adventurer skills first. She informed Touji that if he defeated the main dungeon guardian, he would have all the orichalcum she had collected. Touji couldn't believe the woman's test. He later learned that the woman wanted to explore outside and decided to put herself into a small doll. Unfortunately for her, the door shut behind her, leaving the guardian to protect the main body of the dungeon core. As a result, if the woman tried to go in, the guardian would not recognize her and would attack. Not wanting to face any serious danger, Touji decided to head home and forget the orichalcum. The woman grabbed Touji's coat and begged for his help. Touji tried reasoning with the woman, explaining that he didn't have the power to help her since he was only a D rank. The woman still begged and explained that she no longer had enough time. She had used almost all of her power in making the guardian, and once she got sucked back into the dungeon core, she would no longer have the ability to get out. The woman asked Touji to help her regain her powers. Because of her persuasion, Touji decided to help, but promised that he would run away if things got dangerous. Although Touji agreed to help the woman, he still wondered how strong the guardian really was since it was made of orichalcum. When Goleo finally opened the door, they were surprised to find a giant orichalcum knight inside. Touji was surprised at how huge the guardian was, which made him wonder if he could defeat it. Collect's eyes sparkled as it informed Touji that there was a treasure in front of them. Touji knew that Collect was excited about the treasure, but he also knew that Collect wouldn't be much help in fighting the Guardian. He then summoned his monster book and replaced Collect with his strongest monster, King Cayman. After trying to intimidate the Guardian, King Cayman became nervous. When Touji asked if there was a problem, King Cayman told Touji that the Guardian was too strong and that he would face defeat if they fought. Touji couldn't believe that even his strongest summon was afraid of the Guardian. Seeing the Guardian advancing, Touji became more nervous and was about to run away when King Cayman told him that they could win against the Guardian if they worked together. Touji's hopes immediately rose and he started formulating a plan to help King Cayman defeat the Guardian. Using the kitchen set to pump ammo for King Cayman, the group prepared themselves as the Guardian advanced towards them. When the Guardian punched King Cayman, he was protected by his 1-second invincibility skill, which helped King Cayman take the opportunity to lunge at the Guardian. With King Cayman's attack, the Guardian fell out of balance. Pleased that they were able to take the Guardian down, the woman immediately told Touji that it was too early to celebrate, as they hadn't defeated the Guardian yet. Touji became more nervous when the woman revealed that the Guardian was drawing its power from the core, making it last longer. Touji asked if there was a weak spot they could target. The woman revealed that the emblem on the Guardian's chest was its nucleus, and that it would stop if they broke the nucleus. After being informed that they would still have to penetrate several inches of orichalcum to destroy the nucleus, Touji was annoyed but gained another ray of hope. As Touji and the other summons kept feeding King Cayman more water, King Cayman was also trying its best to penetrate the Guardian's nucleus. After shooting multiple water blasts, the Guardian fell once again. However, this time King Cayman became too small from using up too much water. As Touji and the woman wondered if the Guardian had finally been defeated, they were surprised when it stood up once again. However, the Guardian's nucleus was now exposed. Seeing the Guardian still drawing more power to repair itself, the woman praised her magnificent work, which made Touji mad. Touji had no plans to let the Guardian regenerate even more and immediately started looking for things in his inventory. After finding the item he was looking for, Touji gave it to King Cayman and instructed everyone to get back. The woman was shocked after witnessing King Cayman turn into a giant ball of slime. When the Guardian was about to punch Touji, King Cayman immediately protected his master by absorbing the blow. Touji became excited since the first trial of his giant elixir resulted in great success. Touji's giant elixir increases the user's size and abilities tenfold, but it only lasts for 10 seconds. Fortunately for Touji, King Cayman has extra mass, which means that they don't need to rehydrate King Cayman during the duration of the elixir. Enraged, the Guardian threw multiple strikes at King Cayman, but it had no effect. King Cayman retaliated with a huge slime blast, which threw the Guardian across the room. Seeing the Guardian at its weakest state, King Cayman leaped toward the Guardian and finished it with a huge punch. Seeing the nucleus destroyed, Touji was relieved that the fight was finally over. Before putting King Cayman back in the book, Touji praised him for a job well done. As the Guardian lay on the floor, Touji immediately focused on collecting the loot. In addition to the huge amount of orichalcum, Touji also obtained a bunch of mineral drops. Touji's craftsmanship skills gave a big boost to his inventory. When a woman asked Touji if the Guardian's body was too big for him to take, she was surprised that the Guardian's body suddenly vanished. Shocked that a huge amount of orichalcum had vanished in front of her, she asked Touji what kind of item box he possessed. Seeing that Touji and his summons were about to leave, the woman asked if they really needed to leave so soon. Touji explained that defeating the Guardian had exhausted him and he wished to go home and eat delicious food. Seeing that she could not persuade Touji, the woman offered to send the group off. Since the woman was also the core of the dungeon, she could guarantee safe passage to the entrance. She offered Touji and his summons a shortcut out so that they wouldn't have to go back the same way. After being teleported out of the dungeon, Touji couldn't believe they were really at the entrance. While the woman praised her powers as the dungeon core once again, Touji commented that she should have used her teleportation skill to go back inside the boss room. Annoyed, the woman told Touji that her problem was different, and that her power was stored in the Guardian. Not wanting to continue the useless argument, Touji said farewell to the woman. As Touji was leaving the dungeon, the woman told him he was welcome to come back anytime he needed more materials. However, Touji took the message differently, assuming the woman planned on taking his life with hidden traps and unknown monsters inside the dungeon. Seeing the woman's sulking face, Touji responded that he would visit if he ever had the time. The woman's expression immediately became lively. Touji told the woman that he couldn't set a date for his return, but mentioned he would be sure to come back. Excited, the woman told Touji that she would wait for him. Touji acquired not just raw materials in the dungeon, but also high-level items. The belt and pendant Touji got are part of a set and therefore will only work if they are worn together. When wearing a set item, the more pieces one equips together, the more power and bonus effects they get. Ever since Touji and his summons came back from the dungeon, Touji has been spending some time making new items and raising his crafting skills. Breaking down the Guardian's body boosted Touji's manufacturing skills. But since Touji was still an adventurer, he still had responsibilities to fulfill, which is why he was headed to the guild. Pochi called Touji's attention and gave him a bag. After opening the bag, Touji saw liverfin jerky and asked Pochi if he made it. After chewing the jerky, Touji commented on how good it was and that it would be great if paired with some sake. While chewing the jerky, Touji wondered what liverfin was. Tasting a salty flavor, Touji wondered if it was some kind of fish. Touji did not want to bother himself with the details and left the jerky topic as it was, since it tasted good. Arriving at the Adventurers Guild, the guild receptionist asked Touji if he had been in a party or a group before. Touji responded that aside from the Monster Stampede quest, he had always worked alone. The guild receptionist then shared with Touji that he was being considered for a C-rank promotion. She then mentioned that taking a request that requires a group effort could also be used as a promotion test. Becoming a C-rank is a big deal, since one can take more difficult nomination and escort requests. The harder the quest, the bigger the rewards, and working in a group gives an adventurer better odds of completing the quest. Touji was convinced by the guild receptionist and decided to take the test for C-rank. After asking the guild receptionist what he needed to do to be promoted, Touji was told that the guild would select an inspector to evaluate his performance during a special quest. If Touji performed well in the quest, he would be promoted. The guild receptionist was so happy that Touji decided to take the test and shared how proud she would be if Touji passed the test. Becoming a C-ranked adventurer puts Touji on the same level as the new Destiny party. On the day of Touji's C-rank promotion quest, Touji and Pochi were standing near the gate of the city. The main goal of Touji's quest was to assess the number of monsters that had been scattered after the monster stampede. Touji unexpectedly met Igneel. After the two greeted each other, Igneel was surprised to learn that Touji was taking his promotion exam. Igneel was confident that Touji would pass the exam, as she already knew what Touji was capable of. As the two shared their experiences with rank promotion exams, Touji remembered that Igneel was once an A-rank adventurer, but only got demoted because of the failure of her party. Touji's attention was suddenly directed to a person holding a staff, as he expressed his displeasure with the exam. Everyone taking the promotional exam was then informed that it would take around 3 days to assess the monster distribution. The adventurers were then informed that they could consult the guild and the other adventurers in terms of roles and introductions. Before heading off towards the Sea of Trees forest, Touji's group decided to introduce themselves to each other. The first to introduce himself was a warrior named Graze. After Graze introduced himself, a party member immediately complimented how Graze looked. The next to introduce himself was a shy archer, who shared that if they needed someone to scout, he would do his best in that role. Right after Node introduced himself, the same woman also complimented him. As the girl kept giving compliments to others, Touji was getting confused as to why the girl was so hyperactive. After Node, the girl then introduced herself as Erica, the healer of the team. Expressing how she's not very good at combat, Erica promised that the group could depend on her for healing their injuries. When Igneel introduced herself in front of everyone, Erica had a confused reaction and asked Igneel why she was taking a C-ranked exam when she's already at a high level. When Erica guessed that Igneel got demoted, Igneel admitted that Erica's guess was correct and that she only wanted to reach her previous level once again. Seeing the two women's behavior, Touji sensed that a rivalry was beginning between them. The average level of a C-rank adventurer is around 30. However, thanks to the dungeon quest, Touji was now at level 51. Touji learned his lesson from the bandits that robbed him, which made him decide not to reveal the full extent of his skills. Touji then introduced himself as a summoner and Pochi as his familiar, but to Touji's surprise, Erica ignored Touji and continued to talk to the other two. Graze then remembered Touji from the Monster Stampede quest and his familiar Goleo. Upon learning that Touji has a golem, the party was relieved to learn that they now had a much sturdier defense. The last man had a scowl on his face. He then introduced himself as Gary and proudly expressed his high level to everyone. Gary then boasted that no one could compare to him when it comes to wind magic. Since Touji did not reveal his true level, Gary immediately assumed that he would be the leader since his level was the highest mentioned. Gary then told everyone that they would just have to follow his orders, and he would ensure that they finished the monster assessment quest in no time. With a nervous look, Touji had a hunch that something bad would happen to their party during the exam. Walking through the forest, Touji heard Erica complain about how boring it was, and he compared Erica to a character known as the Party Destroyer from his college days. Gary then suggested to everyone that they decide on a name for the whole team. Node suddenly panicked and expressed how it was impossible for him to come up with a good name. A frustrated Gary told Node that they only needed it for convenience since they were not a permanent party. The group eventually landed on the name HIT. As the acting leader of the group, Gary announced that they would stay in the woods for the next 3 days and reminded them to pack light and wear clothes that are easy to maintain and clean. Since their roles were already decided, Gary mentioned that their next task was to get enough food for 3 days. Gary treated all food as precious regardless of what it looked like and told everyone that they'd have to eat worms and grubs if necessary. Grays asked Gary if he was serious. Gary explained to Grays how horrible it would be if they ended up starving because they didn't have enough food. Seeing Gary's point, Grays decided to follow his advice. Igneal also agreed with Gary since having enough food is essential. After gathering all their food in one place, Touji felt heartbroken, knowing that he would only eat the food that was in front of them and that he couldn't use Pochi's magic kitchen. Gary suddenly expressed his anger towards Node, since the only thing Node could offer was salt and pepper. Node apologized and explained that he normally hunts for his food, and told Gary that he would gather more during their quest. After explaining why he only carried seasonings, Gary expressed his displeasure with partying with Node and mentioned that they were already failing in preparing food. After berating Node, Gary targeted Erica next, since she didn't bring anything at all. Hearing Gary's shouts, Erica's eyes teared up and she begged Gary to stop shouting at her. As Gary voiced his complaints about how the entire party was in danger since they did not have enough provisions, Erica leaned on Grays and told him how scary and mean Gary was. After calming Erica down, Grays told Gary that he didn't mind sharing part of his rations with her. Gary reminded everyone how essential food was and that if they didn't eat enough, their senses would become dull and they wouldn't have the energy to fight or complete the quest. Mad at his irresponsible party members, Gary ordered that they head out since they were just wasting time. As Erica expressed her displeasure towards Gary for being a jerk, both Igneal and Touji remained silent, sensing an ominous aura around Erica. Despite doing nothing but walking for a few hours, Touji still felt anxious since the exam had started. Gary encouraged his party members to plan every stop of the quest, and if they followed the plan, they would surely become C rank. Erica assumed that becoming a C rank would be exciting, but she was only met with disappointment so far. Hearing Erica, Touji couldn't help but also agree. Gary decided on the formation for efficiency. Fighters and ranged attackers were positioned up front, with Node and Pochi on the sides. As a result, Touji was left in the rear as support, and ended up getting stuck listening to Erica's constant whining and complaints. Thinking that listening to Erica's complaints was the hardest thing he had endured so far, he tried to keep a positive attitude since they would only be stuck with each other for 3 days. However, Touji's mood was immediately spoiled when he stepped on a turd. Later that night, Touji, along with his summons and Igneal, finally had the chance to relax. Touji was forced to choke down without complaint the stew that Gary made, which was basically a mix of various ingredients. During his conversation with Igneal, Touji admitted that though his body was tired, his mind wasn't. He shared that although Gary comes off as rough and harsh, he is serious about the quest. Touji knew that Gary had the whole monster survey planned out. Gary's good leadership skills were being overshadowed by his cranky attitude and harsh words. Igneal then told Touji to be careful around Erica as she remembered a rumor about a healer named Erica. When Igneal mentioned the rumored party crusher, Touji was surprised as he did not think that was a real thing. After Igneal explained to Touji about the party crushers, he was in total disbelief and assumed that party crushers were only part of the difficulty level in the games he had played before. Igneal shared how party crushers tend to have different reasons. Some would do it for revenge and others would do it for the sick enjoyment of seeing others fail. Rumors or not, Touji knew that things had just gotten a lot more serious. Goleo started scribbling on the ground and Touji read what Goleo wrote. It asked what the point was in taking the test if one is not willing to try to succeed. Touji saw Goleo's point and thought that if they tried and failed, at least they tried. Igneal then pointed out how it would be heartbreaking if they tried their best and failed because of someone else. Touji ended up worrying even more and wondered if he should just stop holding back and use his skills to help everyone succeed. Out of nowhere, Node approached Touji and Igneal and asked if he could join them in front of the fire. Touji wondered why Node was currently up since it was not yet his turn for the night watch. When Node expressed how he wanted to stay with Touji, his summons, and Igneal, Node was asked if there were any monsters nearby. Shivering, Node shared that Grays and Erica woke up and ran off into the woods, and he asked that they look for them. After looking through the tent, Touji heard a sound deep in the woods. After hearing both Grays and Erica's voices, Touji couldn't believe that the two were actually making out in the forest. Node expressed how terrified he was seeing Erica's eyes, and shared that he would rather stay a solo adventurer than know what happens between the other members of a party. Touji and Igneal tried cheering Node up, explaining that there are also good parties. As the night ended and the day rose, things still did not get better. Gary kept talking about how he lost something that had been just around his neck. Seeing how frustrated Gary was, Erica kept teasing him. This annoyed Gary even more, and he instructed everyone to get ready for a full day's surveying. While Touji and Igneal packed the camping gear, Touji wondered if they had done something bad in their previous lives for karma to saddle their party with Erica. Seeing that he could no longer find his item, Gary decided to forget about it since he had already made preparations. Erika continued to tease Gary even though she knew the missing item was a watch. When Gary accused Erika of stealing his watch, he told her she would face punishment if she did not return it. Erika became mad and asked Gary who he was to give others punishment. When Gary reminded Erika that he was the party leader, Erika scoffed at him and told him that Grays was the true leader. Grays then explained how efficient Gary's plan really was, but couldn't see the possibility of them finishing the quest with just efficiency. When Gary stated that both Igneel and he had a much higher level than Grays, he asked Grays what made him a better leader. Erika intervened in the conversation by pretending to be scared of Gary. When Gary told Grays that he was being manipulated by a girl, Erika showed Gary his watch and explained that she found it, blaming Gary for being careless. In the end, Gary begged Erika to give the watch back since it was a precious memento of someone close to him. With Erika's manipulation, Gary surrendered his position to Grays. Touji wanted to say something in Gary's defense, but Erika forbade them from helping Gary with a threat. As Igneel expressed her frustration towards Erika and Grays, Touji suggested they just file a complaint to the guild when they got back since murdering their party wouldn't help them. Gary then called Touji and Igneel's attention and shared that he knew they really couldn't defend him against Erika. He then explained that the watering hole they were heading to might be home to a settlement of lizardmen. Gary explained that after the monster stampede, the guild thought the group of surviving lizardmen retreated to the biggest source of water in the area. Lizardmen are pretty hostile and territorial, meaning they would attack anything that isn't a lizardman. Gary explained how he had already planned out the quest, but since Grays and Erika decided to change course, they were now headed to the lizardmen's new habitat. When the group saw a waterfall and stream, Erika immediately took her clothes off and asked Grays to follow her and enjoy the water. As the two were having fun in the water, Erika asked the others to keep a lookout while they took a bath. As the others voiced their displeasure at being treated unfairly, Gary apologized to everyone for their suffering on his behalf. Igneel then told Gary not to worry about it and take it as a learning experience. After Igneel and Touji comforted and encouraged Gary, he immediately saw their point and apologized for sounding rude and being bossy in the beginning. While Erika and Grays were busy having fun, the others focused on getting Gary's watch back. Out of nowhere, a flame burst was suddenly cast from afar, making Touji wonder if it was Igneel. Witnessing the huge flame near the lake, Gary was able to confirm his theory that there were monsters residing in the water. Seeing a window of opportunity, Touji suggested that they move now. Gary hoped that Igneel didn't burn Erika and Gray's bodies, so that he would still have a chance to get his pocket watch. Curious, Gary was asked if his watch would get ruined if it came in contact with water. Gary was not worried about the water since the watch is waterproof, but he dislikes the pocket watch getting damaged by fire or impacts. Worried about encountering more monsters, Gary suggested to everyone that they get out of the area quickly. After knowing how dangerous the area really is, Gary believes that they can now convince Erika and Grays. After hearing Gary, Touji plans to give the two a big lesson in humility and respecting others. Touji thought of a good idea and asked the others to follow his lead. When Touji and the others arrived at the lake, they were surprised to see many monsters, which Node immediately identified as liver fins. Touji became puzzled since the name of the monster is similar to the fish jerky he ate before. Seeing as the monster resembles an old fat man, Touji later noticed the monster's armpit and its hair, which also resembles the jerky that he ate before. After piecing together the puzzle, Touji became mad at Pochi for feeding him jerky that was made from liver fin armpit hair. When a bunch of lizard men came out of the water, both Grays and Erika were now more scared as they assumed that there were no monsters since the place looked safe. Touji tried to blame Igneel for not telling them that there were monsters near them as well. Igneel then pointed out that he had no time to warn everyone since she was busy saving Grays and Erika. When Touji asked the two how long they were going to stay in the water, Erika became pissed and insulted Touji, calling him a pervert for staring at her. Annoyed, Touji's expression changed and he asked Erika if she really wanted to be insulting. After receiving a smack on the head from Golio because of his behavior, Touji admitted that his behavior did not portray him as a better person. However, Touji still found it satisfying to give Erika a taste of her own medicine. As Gary was reminding everyone again how dangerous the waters were, Touji asked Gary to wait as he made the situation they were in clear to Grays. Touji explained that Grays and Erika were bathing in the biggest water source in the area, which the lizardmen and liverfins were competing for territory. Seeing Grays' surprised look, Touji made it clear that he was not joking as the facts could be seen by the high number of liverfins and lizardmen. Since Grays is the leader of the party, Touji asked what they were going to do next. Touji then spoke to Erika, pointing out how her actions yesterday were terrible. Since it was not the time for them to be arguing, Touji shared that Gary apologizes for how he treated everyone before. After Gary apologized to everyone, Touji then suggested that Erika return the pocket watch so that they could start anew. Admitting that what he came up with was the cheesiest plan, Touji still believes that it will work. By acting as a third-party mediator, Touji can get the two sides to apologize to each other. If Touji could get Grays back on their team, it then gives them a better chance in fighting off the monsters. Knowing a good leader's characteristics, Touji believes that Grays would set pride aside for everyone. After Grays tried to talk some sense into Erica, he asked her to return the watch. Although Erica was hesitant as she believed that Gary would hurt her if she returned it, she was left with no choice since they were in need of help. Touji was pleased that the plan he came up with was working quite well, and hoped that the party could become closer so that they could all go home. As Erica was about to hand over the pocket watch, she immediately changed her mind and threw it into the water near the liver fins. Since Erica's attitude still didn't change, Touji was in total disbelief and was left with no other choice than to retrieve the pocket watch himself. Diving into the water, Touji instantly located the watch but was surprised to see that he was surrounded by liver fins. Although the liver fins hold an advantage in the water, Touji plans to prove to them that there are far stronger beings aside from them. Summoning his monster, the liver fins were blown away along with the lake. Touji was surprised after seeing King Cayman show up. Touji did not remember King Cayman being so big, but then recalled that he had summoned the monster on the lake. Touji guessed that King Cayman absorbed all the water into his body to save him. Defeating all the liver fins simultaneously, Touji remembered how King Cayman would always win and massacre the enemies one-sidedly. Surprised that King Cayman was shooting water near him, Touji read what King Cayman wrote. King Cayman was curious why Touji let Erica put him in danger. Witnessing all of Erica's wrongdoings, King Cayman shared his opinion that having Erica in their group would only bring more trouble. As Touji agreed with King Cayman, he was surprised to learn that his monsters could still see through his eyes and see whatever Touji was seeing. After witnessing Touji risking his life because of Erica's actions, Touji found it an understatement to say that King Cayman was pissed. King Cayman then split himself into multiple small King Caymans and pursued the remaining liver fins. Touji thought that King Cayman was very cool for using his division ability to take on the monsters. After seeing a powerful summon like King Cayman, Erica assumed that Touji only had a kobold and a golem. Touji responded that he never mentioned that he only had Pochi and Goleo, and explained that he had more monsters but could not summon more than 3 at a time. Approaching Touji, Erica grabbed his arm and shared how impressed she was with his powerful summons. Expressing her belief that Touji had always been the best in the group, Touji and the others were speechless as they could tell that Erica was trying to work her charm again. Using her seductive body to sway Touji to her side, Erica told Touji that Grays was the one who told her to take Gary's watch. Sensing an ominous feeling, Touji told himself not to get involved with Erica and wished that someone would take her away. Touching Touji's leg, Erica wished for Touji to protect her, promising to be very grateful. Upon sensing a more menacing presence behind her, Erica turned around and was surprised to see King Cayman looking at her with anger. Touji explained to Erica that King Cayman was a battle junkie and would get really mad if there were no strong enemies to fight, which was why Touji didn't normally summon him unless necessary. Touji then pointed out that aside from the liver fins and lizard men, Erica was the only remaining enemy for King Cayman. After everything Erica had done to everyone, Touji was not surprised if King Cayman had some killing intent. Before Touji could finish his sentence, he was surprised to see King Cayman choking the life out of Erica. Pulling King Cayman away from Erica, Touji asked Pochi and Goleo for assistance as he was not that strong. As Touji finally got King Cayman away from Erica, annoyed by what happened, Erica called Touji a stupid amateur tamer for not being able to control his summon. When King Cayman heard Erica's insult, he immediately shot her hair with his water, which ended up cutting down a tree. Frightened, Erica was curious as to what happened as she felt that she had almost died. Touji was impressed with King Cayman's power. Even though he was at a fraction of his size, the water shots could still kill someone. Seeing Erica being chased by multiple King Caymans, Touji gave up on stopping King Cayman as he believed that he could not stop him anymore. He also did not feel bad since he believed that Erica had it coming because of her behavior. Grays tried to speak with Touji, pointing out how he and his summon were taking it too far. However, King Cayman was not amused with Grays and threw dead lizard men at him, knocking him out. Touji thought that King Cayman had no sympathy for Grays when he took Erica's side, but Touji did not expect that King Cayman would throw the lizard men with such power that it crumpled Grays' armor. As the others witnessed King Cayman's punishment, they told themselves that getting back at Erica and Grays was not worth the pain that King Cayman would inflict. As Touji handed over Gary's pocket watch to him, he then asked Gary about the guild report since they still had to tell the guild about the liver fins and lizard men. Gary explained that in normal situations they would have to tell the guild the truth and leave out no details, but since the matter itself was already taken care of, Gary believed that they could sweep the whole matter under the rug. Agreeing with Gary, Node shared that he did not witness and remember anything. Igneal understood that they would just keep their mouths shut, but she was still curious as to how they would keep those who were uncooperative from revealing the secret. As Erica stood by the unconscious Grays, She awaited her revenge on those who had humiliated her. Wanting everyone to pay for what they did, Erika planned to tell the guild that the others tried to kill her, including Touji's summon, King Cayman. Threatening and insulting Touji at the same time, Erika told him to kiss his C-ranking goodbye for trying to murder her, stating how she would be the only one to get promoted while the others would stay as D-rank. Holding back her anger, Igneel asked Touji why she shouldn't burn Erika, as she was now tempted to risk losing her C-rank license. Although Touji tried to calm Igneel down, she got even angrier when Erika started insulting her, insinuating that Igneel slept around with other people to get to C-rank. As Touji was trying to stop Igneel from killing Erika, they were suddenly interrupted. When Touji turned around, he immediately recognized the person as the guild receptionist at the front desk. The guild receptionist then introduced herself to everyone as Leslie. After learning the receptionist's name, Touji wondered why she was in the forest. Leslie then told everyone that aside from the two members, no one in the party was held responsible for what transpired. In order to keep track of crimes within the guild, people like Leslie are given the authority to covertly watch the actions of guild members and adventurers and administer punishment to those who break the laws and policies of the guild. Being a guild receptionist is Leslie's day job, and she revealed that she is also a guild examiner and enforcer, which gives her the authority to arrest criminals like Erika. Touji was very happy upon hearing that what they discussed earlier would not be shared and that all of them except for Erika were deemed innocent. Tied down, Erika expressed how she was supposed to be the victim and asked if they were going to ignore that she was assaulted. Erika then mentioned that Touji should be arrested for having a dangerous monster that almost killed her. Leslie made it clear that as an official examiner, her judgment was final. Considering everything she saw for the last 3 days, Leslie believed that the only one who put the party in danger was Erika. When Erika asked what Leslie was talking about, Leslie then mentioned how Erika's list of crimes was too long to mention at the moment, and that she would rather continue to perform her duties. After praising the rest for their hard work, Leslie praised everyone for passing the rank-up exam, except for Grace and Erika. As Touji and the others were pleased to hear that they passed the exam, Erika voiced her frustration, saying that it was not fair for her to get beaten up and not receive a rank-up. Leslie then asked for Touji and the others' cooperation as eyewitnesses for her report to catalog Erika's crimes once they returned to the guild. After the incident, it was later found out that Erika was the rumored party crasher who caused others to fail the rank-up exam. Erika was hired by a rogue member of the guild staff to cause trouble, and to make the exam more difficult to pass. Since the guild kept covering up Erika's crimes, it also explained why she hadn't been arrested before. Erika would do things like steal money and valuables from the party members, and sow discord among them, so they ended up not trusting each other. The reason why Erika was hired to be the party crasher was because there was a lot of discord among the guild's inner circle. Some members thought that the rank-up exam was too easy and wanted to make it more difficult to get promoted, hence the creation of the party crasher. The rogue faction didn't count on an honest examiner like Leslie to arrest Erika and blow the lid off the whole conspiracy. Once it was revealed that some guild staff was purposely stacking the deck against D ranks, things got ugly. Grace got demoted from D to E rank and was also experiencing a more depressing problem. As for Erika and the rogue faction, they were expelled from the guild and put to hard labor. Erika had been an ex-adventurer with a big grudge against the guild. Later on, Erika and the other rogue members were attacked by some of their victims, and it was later revealed that the rogue faction's victims had even bigger grudges toward them. A few days later, Touji and Igneel received their newly updated C-rank cards. Returning to C-rank, Igneel believed that her credibility as an adventurer had been restored. After the exam, Gary and Node decided to form a party together. He was invited by Gary to join their party, but Touji believed that he wasn't ready to join others and politely turned down the offer. As Pochi gave Igneel and Touji cakes for their successful rank-up, Touji felt a bit weird to have Igneel in his room since she was the first girl to ever enter his room. Although Touji was the one who invited Igneel to his room, it looked like Galeo was keeping her company while Pochi was taking care of the food. When Touji saw Igneel's staff fall on the floor, he immediately grabbed it and put it back on the sofa. Upon holding the staff, Touji was surprised when he saw the staff's ridiculous stats. The stats on the magic staff were so outrageous that Touji believed he wouldn't be able to replicate the staff, even with his own production cheats. Touji was even more shocked upon learning that the staff's level increase and costs were off the charts. Touji ended up getting frustrated since he was unable to replicate such monstrous equipment even with his game-like manufacturing cheats. One of the staff's features was the spiritual attribute, where Igneel could summon a monster based on her attribute. After hearing all the things that Igneel mentioned about her staff, Touji couldn't help but agree with Igneel that her staff was really great. Touji could only hope that he could make the same one someday. Touji wondered if Igneel knew how awesome her magic staff was. Although Touji was afraid to let Igneel know how powerful her item's stats were, he decided to just ask Igneel if her staff was used or repurposed. When Igneel responded that her staff once belonged to her mother and would later be passed down to her, Touji looked puzzled as he did not follow what Igneel said. Some time ago, Igneel was forced to pawn her staff, and after Touji gave her the orc testicles, she was able to buy it back. For Igneel, her staff was simply a weapon with an attribute enhancement that she used. Touji realized that his appraisal ability allowed him to know more about the item than others did. As Igneel shared her opinion towards items or weapons that would be beyond one's ability, she also mentioned that once her level exceeded her item's requirement, she planned to sell the staff and buy a new one. Touji told Igneel that she didn't need to sell her staff, as she could just increase its abilities by pushing its growth level to the limit. Touji's words made Igneel remember a rumor where items could have their levels increased, but she expressed her worry since she had never seen it done before. Touji confirmed the rumor, explaining that the growth function of the item would match the user's abilities. Igneel felt in awe and wondered if Touji could really increase the item's level. Touji once again confirmed that leveling the item was possible and that proof of it was Igneel's staff, as it still worked after years of use. Even though it was a used staff, Touji thought that the feelings of its previous owner were still inside it. When the user of the staff was in a pinch, Touji believed that it would increase in power to help the user out. As Igneel thought Touji's opinion was quite far-fetched, Touji wondered if he should explain to Igneel about spiritual affinity as well. Igneel admitted that her staff had served her quite well, unlike the cheap one she broke when she was captured by the orcs. She guessed that her mother knew about the growth factor and handed it down to her. Igneel later realized that it wasn't until after she pawned her mother's staff that her rank dropped from C to D when she joined Bray and his party, guessing that her rank drop was just karma for throwing away a keepsake of her mother's. Agreeing with Igneel's words, Touji was surprised when Igneel called his attention and informed him that she gave Goleo a makeover. Although Touji did not know what to feel about Goleo's makeup, he decided not to say anything bad since it looked like Goleo was having fun. When Igneel asked if she could bring Goleo along on her next shopping trip, Touji thought that there was no way he would allow Igneel's request, as he was not yet ready to see Goleo wearing a pink frilly dress. However, Touji responded differently from what he thought and agreed to Igneel's request. Thinking of his previous nickname, Touji guessed that he could cope with the nickname of Dress-Up Golem Mania Guy. At the rest stop station north of Salto, Touji finally arrived with a carriage full of crates and sacks. To reach the rest stop station, one would have to trek through the forest and over the mountains for several days. But there was a good reason why Touji took the request to deliver supplies to the rest stop. Assuming that Touji was tired from the trip, the guard informed him that he could freely use their facilities. The rest stop station that Touji visited was the starting line for his journey to obtain some special ingredients. Touji needed to find some fairy berries and ultra-purified water, which were the key components of the legendary elixir. Touji already expected that the ingredients he was looking for couldn't be found nearby, and that the further away he was from the city, the more dangerous it was to camp outside. After finding out that golems didn't need to sleep, Touji felt happy and made Goleo stand watch overnight. Golems are basically made from the earth and draw power from the ground beneath them. They can also restore damage by absorbing more from the earth. As Touji began his exploration, he immediately noticed that there were a bunch of kobolds nearby. Guessing that Pochi would not like to harm his own kind, Touji asked Pochi if he could fight the kobolds or go back in the book. Puzzled at first, Pochi suddenly shot a kobold without hesitation, which surprised Touji. Confused, Touji reminded Pochi that it was thanks to the pack of kobolds that they were saved from the bandits. However, Pochi had a different view. Writing down in a notebook, Pochi explained to Touji that he followed the law of nature, which is the survival of the fittest. Pochi also added that the kobolds nearby were wild monsters and planned to shred Touji. After reading all of Pochi's notes, Touji couldn't believe that he was getting chided by his own summon. After reading Pochi's last paper, Touji was touched and agreed that they needed more kobold summon cards to raise Pochi's level and change his class. After witnessing how Pochi killed the kobolds and took the kobold summoning cards, Touji still found it hard to believe that his cute Pochi could be a hard-boiled and completely merciless killer in order to get stronger so he could stay by his side. During their search for fairy berries and ultra-purified water, Pochi went on a kobold hunting spree. Touji witnessed a complete massacre as Pochi used the crossbow Touji made for him like a sniper rifle, picking off wild kobolds left and right. Before the day was done, Touji's summons book had a huge inventory of kobold summon cards. Touji could only imagine what Pochi could evolve into. Touji and Pochi had a busy day as they collected 500 kobold summon cards and blew over 13 million kettles. Although Touji paid a high price, it was all worth it since Pochi had moved up from normal to unique type. Disappointed that they couldn't find any of the ingredients they were looking for, Touji was still happy after getting a 50% increase in kettle drops, which meant they could make a ton of money and evolve his summons even faster. Since evolving a familiar is very expensive, Touji believed that what he had achieved for the day was a win. Now a unique type monster, Touji suggested to Pochi that they celebrate with some dinner. Arriving at the cafeteria, Touji was surprised when he did not see one person eating. Realizing that it was already late and that the dinner rush was over, Touji decided that he would just use the kitchen. Knowing Pochi's preferred ingredients, Touji took out the fresh ingredients and just sat back as Pochi worked his cooking magic. Touji suddenly smelled something good, but then realized that the smell was familiar. Checking the ingredients used by Pochi, Touji recognized the dish as curry and immediately chomped down on the food. Fortunately for the guards who were on a late-night shift, they met Touji and Pochi and had a delicious dinner. When morning came, Touji greeted Pochi but was surprised when he didn't see Pochi beside him. Guessing where Pochi went, Touji visited the cafeteria and immediately saw that the place was full of people. If Pochi is near a kitchen and a bunch of hungry people, he would go into diner mode. Observing Pochi, Touji thought that Pochi was making breakfast as well as food for lunch. While having his meal, Touji was asked by one of the guards if he was heading out after breakfast. Touji responded that he was, as he planned to go somewhere far. Since Pochi knew about Touji's plans, Pochi started making breakfast for him. But Touji believed that Pochi got a little carried away. Curious, the guard asked Touji what he was looking for. After sharing the items that Touji was trying to locate, the guard was surprised since he also knew that the items were very rare and hard to find. Touji suddenly stood up out of excitement when another guard mentioned that he had seen one of the items on one of his patrols. Touji assumed that it was the fairy berries but was a bit disappointed when the guard responded that it was the clean water. Touji still counted it as a win since he didn't have any idea where to find the purified water in the first place. Touji was told that he would have to go east from the station, and the journey was a 2-day hike through the forest. The guard didn't have an appraisal skill, so he wasn't sure about the water, but the magical aura in the area was so dense and the water was so clean that the guard believed the fairies were involved. While the guard was being teased by the other guards, Touji thought of something and asked if fairy berries were nearby the clean water. The guard was not certain about the fairy berries but still advised Touji to forget the whole thing. The guard then mentioned that according to legend, the fairies cleaned the water and used it to grow the magic berries. The guard then shared his experience where he wasn't sure if he was hallucinating or if the fairies were using illusions. But after seeing the water, the guard was led into a place filled with dangerous monsters. The guard barely managed to get out of the place with his life. Curious, Touji asked what kind of countermeasures could be used against hallucinations and illusions. The guards gave Touji some tips, the first being gear equipped with anti-illusion magic for some defense, and a sour Vita berry since the taste of bitterness or sourness can offset the effects of hallucinations. In the RPG that Touji used to play, illusion and hallucination effects weren't all that effective. But in the real world, hallucination can be very deadly. After eating a really big breakfast, Touji departed from the station to look for the pure water. On their journey, Touji thought of what the guard said and realized that wandering off in the forest while hallucinating would give the impression of a 2-day trip. Since Touji was not hallucinating or under an illusion, he believed that he would soon reach the water. After seeing the clean body of water, Touji did not expect to find it so easily. If the water was indeed ultra pure, Touji believed that Collect would react to its high value. But since Collect didn't have any reaction, he believed that it was just clear spring water. All of a sudden, Touji's collector option started acting up, which made him wonder if there was something worth collecting in the bushes. After checking the bushes, Touji was surprised when he actually saw the real fairy berries. Fairies are supposed to swarm around bushes, but Touji did not see any fairies around. Since the water that Touji found was not the ultra-purified water, he guessed that finding the ingredients for the elixir would be very difficult. When Touji asked Pochi if he picked up a scent that comes from fairies, Pochi responded that he did not. Touji then realized that he had asked a dumb question, as neither of them had ever seen a fairy. Since Pochi didn't detect any unusual odors on the berries, Touji guessed that there weren't any fairies around before. Marking the spot where they found the fairy berries on his map, Touji then continued on his journey to look for the ultra-purified water. Upon looking down, Touji noticed that his leg was wrapped in a vine, and he was relieved that he didn't trip. Unexpectedly, Touji was suddenly dragged by the vine, hitting the trees as he passed by. Confused as to what was going on, Touji could only tell that the vine was trying to kill him, and that he needed to cut it. Unfortunately for Touji, since he was being thrashed by the vine, he couldn't aim properly at it. When Pochi finally came to Touji's aid, Pochi was suddenly wrapped in vines and ended up joining Touji in getting captured. As the two were being hung upside down, it was revealed that the vines belonged to a carnivorous pitcher plant. The plant is an extremely dangerous species that uses its vines to trap and drag prey toward it, and its diet consists of small animals and humans. Touji figured that he was being dragged away by a monster and guessed that the monster hunts by laying down its vines like tripwires and grabbing anything that touches them. When Touji noticed some tiny people in front of him, he was surprised to see wings behind them. Touji realized that the reason there were no fairies near the berry bushes was because of the carnivorous plant that took them. Pochi shared his plan with Touji for saving the fairies, expecting that they would receive fairy berries and the location of the ultra-purified water as gratitude. Touji found Pochi's idea great and agreed to go with it. Since both of them had lost their blades while being dragged, Touji asked Pochi if he could shoot the main body of the plant with his crossbow. When Pochi tried to shoot at the plant, the carnivorous plant suddenly shook Pochi, making him miss his shot and almost hitting Touji. As Touji was scolding Pochi for almost hitting him, he didn't expect that the plant would be smart and wished that they had a level 120 monster to smash the plant. Fortunately for Touji, both Goleo and Collect arrived in time to save them. Calling out for help, Touji instructed Goleo to smash the plant and set them free. As Goleo was about to make his move, he was suddenly wrapped with the plant's vines. However, the vines were easily destroyed by Goleo, setting both Pochi and Touji free in the process. The carnivorous plant decided to focus all of its attacks on Goleo, wrapping its limbs with vines. Touji praised Goleo's heaviness as it played a vital role in his advantage against the carnivorous plant. Hearing that Touji called him heavy, Goleo threw his hammer at Touji since his feelings were hurt. To make up for his mistake, Touji told Goleo that he was fine the way he was, and instructed Goleo to show the plant that he was far superior. After receiving the order from Touji, Goleo then used his ultimate final attack, the Super Goleo Smasher. Praising Goleo for his magnificent work, Touji wondered what he could do to help the fairies. Touji learned that health potions do not work on the fairies after making one of the fairies drink one. He also noticed that the fairies' mana levels were very low. Touji then remembered that fairy berry juice is also considered a mana potion, and made one of the fairies drink it. Touji and his summons were relieved to see that the fairy was waking up. When the fairy finally regained his senses, he was surprised to see a human in front of him and asked the human to stay away. Touji immediately cleared up the misunderstanding and explained that he was the one who saved all of the fairies from the plant. Shocked, the fairy later believed Touji's words after seeing the plant's dead body. However, the fairy was still curious as to why a human would save them. Before the fairy could finish his sentence, Pochi suddenly rammed food into his mouth. The fairy's anger immediately turned to delight as he liked the food that Pochi made him eat. Their conversation was then interrupted by a female fairy, who introduced herself as Rowan, leader of the fairy folk. After thanking Touji for saving them, Touji asked if they lived around the area. Rowan did not respond to Touji's question and expressed that they needed to leave immediately. Rowan did not want to be rude towards their savior, but she showed hostility towards Touji since he was a human. The male fairy then told Rowan that they should eat some more, as he discerned that Touji was not a bad person. Touji didn't mind Rowan's rude behavior and suggested that they eat Pochi's food since there was plenty more. Annoyed at first since everyone started eating human food, Rowan decided to take a bite after receiving some. With just one bite, Rowan immediately fell for the food. Touji knew that no one could resist Pochi's homemade butter cookies, as one would be immediately captivated by their sweetness after one bite. Pochi also came up with a sweet jelly made from slime residue, which Touji was not very fond of, and he hoped that the fairies would eat the jelly as well. Rowan couldn't help but admit that Pochi's specially brewed tea was very nice. When Touji asked Rowan if he could ask her something, Rowan immediately guessed that the reason why Touji saved them was so that they could return the favor. Rowan agreed but informed Touji that it would be within their power. When Touji asked Rowan if the berry bushes near the watering hole belonged to them, Rowan's facial expression changed and she asked Touji if that was what he was after. Not wanting to be seen as a thief, Touji told Rowan that he wished to have some of their berries. Upon learning that what Touji wanted from them was the fairy berries, Rowan was glad that Touji was honest, since they had an experience where they were once hunted down by humans. After listening to Rowan and learning how the humans were cruel to them, Touji had no plans of doing the same thing, but understood why the fairies were hostile to humans. Rowan expressed how she wanted to thank Touji for saving them, but after being driven away from their home, the berry bush that Touji found was the only one remaining in the area. The berries are vital to the fairies' survival since they sustain their magic and life force. Touji realized that he had stumbled into something very troublesome, and guessed that he would just look elsewhere. When Touji asked Rowan if they knew where to find the ultra-pure water, she mentioned that it was located east and the journey took a day and a half. Rowan once again showed hostility towards Touji, and was more surprised that Touji knew where their paradise was located. Apologizing for her behavior, Rowan agreed to talk about the ultra-pure water. She then explained that getting to the spring of ultra-pure water was currently impossible. Curious, Touji asked why it was impossible. Rowan revealed that the spring was located in their former paradise, and the reason they were driven out was because of a terrible monster. Besides illusions, fairies can use the 4 elements, which meant that normal monsters weren't a problem. However, the creature that drove the fairies away from their home is immune to their magic, which means that they couldn't fight it. The monster loves to prey on fairies and is known as the fairy eater. A short time ago, the fairies used to live near a fountain of ultra-pure water that the soldier had wandered into. Fairy berries can only grow with water that has a higher purity than Shimizu, a spring of incredibly pure water. The ultra-pure water was perfect for growing berries, which made the fairies think of the place as the ultimate paradise. Unfortunately, the trouble began with a single fairy. This troublemaking fairy was named Loki, ironically after the Norse god of mischief. The general rule was to stay away from humans and protect their paradise. Normally, fairies use magic illusions to keep humans away, but Loki didn't follow the rules very well and took pleasure in tormenting humans who wandered close to the fairies' paradise. Loki was so reckless with his actions that he decided to torment others with his pranks. Loki's bad behavior doomed all the fairies when he decided to taunt the one thing that the fairies avoid at all costs, the fairies' natural enemy. Rowan shared how Loki led the fairy eater to their home. Even if they were able to hurt the fairy eater, it would just eat more magic and heal its injuries. Since the fairies' primary means of defending themselves is using magic, they were practically helpless against the fairy eater. About a week ago, the fairies were suddenly attacked by the fairy eater. The fairies were left with no choice but to flee since their magic was useless against the fairy eater. Not only did the fairy eater eat fairies, but it also consumed the berries and drank the purified water. The fairies managed to save one berry bush to transplant somewhere else. Rowan and all the fairies are still hoping to survive long enough for the fairy eater to tire of the taste of berries and water and move on. Touji was shocked to learn that the fairy eater not only consumes fairies but also the berries and the purified water. Rowan responded as she believes that for the fairy eater there is no difference. Either the fairy eater will devour them and their magic or consume the berries and water along with their magical essence. Touji could understand why the fairy eater would not leave the area since it was practically a perfect hunting ground. When Touji asked Rowan if she knew of another source of ultra-purified water, Rowan responded that he would have to cross over a mountain to get to water with the same level of purity as their ultimate paradise. When Rowan shared that normal clean water is a scarce commodity and is considered valuable, Touji was surprised as he had no idea that the price of pure water was so high. From what Touji understood from Rowan, fairy eaters are able to extract the magic from the ultra-pure water and expel it as regular water. For it to become ultra-pure water again, it would need at least 50 years to soak up enough magic from the air. Touji finally made up his mind and told Goleo and Pochi that they would defeat the fairy eater. Not wanting the fairy eater to waste more of the ultra-pure water, Touji also decided to help the fairies. When Rowan asked Touji if he would really help them, he confirmed it and honestly told Rowan his real purpose, and that the only thing blocking that was the fairy eater, which Touji decided to defeat. Rowan became very excited and willingly offered as much water and berries as Touji needed if he defeated the fairy eater. Since clean water is hard to use, Rowan shared how they've been feeding their last berry bush with clean water infused with their own magic. Touji learned that in the fairy paradise, the spring created a huge amount of ultra-pure water to maintain all the berry bushes. However, the fairies also have a secret technique to change pure water into ultra-pure water. In exchange for helping the fairies, Rowan taught Touji the technique for transforming pure water. Ironically for Touji, his cheats allowed him to learn the technique easily. After Touji and the others decided to head out towards the fairy paradise at dawn, they made their plans during that time. As they were discussing how to handle the fairy eater, their meeting was suddenly interrupted by another fairy wishing to fight alongside her sister Rowan. After Gwen interrupted the meeting, the other fairies then showed up and expressed their support to fight alongside Rowan. Seeing Harold and the other fairies so determined to get their home back, Rowan couldn't help but tear up with happiness. Observing the situation, Touji pretty much understood what was going on between Harold and Rowan and decided to move on. When Harold and the other fairies asked about the human with Rowan, she then introduced Touji to them, sharing how Touji was the one who saved her from the killer plant. When Rowan shared their plans to retrieve their home with Touji's help, Harold and the other fairies had some doubts about Touji, thinking he might not be strong enough. Rowan did not ignore the others' worries but believed that they were in an emergency and would require all the help they could get. Excited, Harold couldn't wait to defeat the fairy eater and get their home back. Touji advised Harold and the other fairies not to charge in recklessly. Since the fairy eater consumes magic, the fairies would just make it stronger. As Touji planned to use weapons against the fairy eater instead of magic, he noticed that the fairies did not have weapons and asked how they were casting their magic without a staff or wand. Harold shared that they just cast their magic with their hands, and that only humans use a staff or wand to cast magic. It was then revealed that since the fairies can use magic with just their hands, humans have ruthlessly hunted them. Shockingly, other humans rip off the fairies' wings to use as material to create the wands they use. Apologizing for his ignorance, Touji promised himself that he would never use craftsmanship that required using a body part of the fairies. As they were about to go near the place, Touji suggested to the other fairies to wait while they handled the fairy eater. When Touji finally saw the fairy eater, he was surprised at how huge it was. Believing that the fairy eater was sleeping off a fairy berry feast, Touji thought it was their best chance to attack while it was unconscious. Sneaking behind Touji, Harold was shocked to see that the monster had gotten bigger than he remembered. Since they needed Pochi's crossbow, Touji ordered Pochi to release rapid fire and put holes in the worm. As Pochi's attacks connected, the fairy eater let out a painful sound. With the help of Touji's enhanced crossbow bolts, which can penetrate monsters' hides that are level 120, they continued with their rhythm. Touji planned to test out his secret strategy. Seeing the injured fairy eater coming towards them, the fairies immediately ran away. Continuing with their advantage, Touji ordered Pochi to keep on shooting at the fairy eater. Touji then gave Goleo the signal, and Goleo immediately launched an attack on the fairy eater. After hitting the fairy eater right on its head, Touji then ordered Goleo to use the trump card. All the fairies were shocked to see Touji's summon becoming huge. After Goleo turned humongous, he grabbed the fairy eater and easily defeated it by ripping its head from its body. After having the fairy eater's head thrown in front of him, Touji then stabbed the head with a sword, completing the subjugation of the fairy eater. The fairies were ecstatic as they could now go back to their home and hailed Goleo as the great fairy eater slayer. Checking the area, Touji was relieved to learn that there were still lots of fairy berries and water for them to take. Still in disbelief that Touji had really defeated the fairy eater, Rowan expressed her gratitude towards Touji. Rowan was then reminded by Touji of her promise to show him the method to make his own fairy water and berries. Before Rowan showed the method, she wished to properly treat their saviors to a feast to celebrate, showcasing fairy hospitality. Curious, Touji wondered what fairy hospitality was. Harold then told everyone that the others who stayed behind were still safe and fortunate that they still had a lot of leftover berry juice. Although Pochi's cookies were delicious, Rowan believed that their berries would not lose in flavor. Thanks to the extremely fertile soil of their home, the berries Rowan and the others grow in the area taste good, and the fairy berry wine they make from the juice is something to behold. A fairy then approached Touji, giving him their food, a breadfruit. The food tasted like toast and jam and was considered a delicacy for the fairies. Touji remembered that he also had a breadfruit back in his old world. However, if a breadfruit is baked, it would taste just like bread with no flavor. Pochi showed interest in the breadfruit and wished to cook the same thing. After cutting and peeling the ingredients, the fairies were curious about Pochi's methods as they normally just cut the ingredients and scoop out the inside. As Touji agreed with the fairy, he believed that Pochi had some kind of idea. After frying the pieces in oil and coating them in a sauce made from honey and a bit of soy sauce with some sesame seeds, Touji immediately recognized the food as Daigaku Imo. When Touji and the fairies tasted the food that Pochi cooked, they felt electrified as the food was very delicious. The fairies couldn't believe that just by adding honey and cooking it in oil, Pochi made their breadfruit even more delicious. While everyone was enjoying the feast, Touji noticed something behind him. Upon turning around, he revealed that the fairy hiding behind the trees was none other than Loki, who wished to have a taste of the food. The other fairies then noticed Loki as well. As Touji recalled, Loki was the fairy that caused all the trouble with the fairy eater. When Harold saw Loki approaching them, he immediately grabbed a twig and drew a line between Loki and him. Believing that their party was just starting to get good, Harold asked Loki what he was doing back in their home. When Loki responded that he returned because he was worried about everyone, Harold pointed out to Loki that he was the first one to flee when the fairy eater showed up. While following Rowan's instructions to save the saplings, Harold asked Loki what he was doing at that time. When Loki responded that he was scared and panicked, Touji could tell that Loki was not making himself look good with his explanations. He was not sure if the others were going to easily forgive Loki for bringing the fairy eater and nearly killing them all. Although all of the fairies had already informed Loki about the fairy eater and not to bother it, Loki still did not listen. Due to his unthinkable actions, Loki was surprised and got scared when the fairy eater retaliated. Loki then tried to twist the situation, making the incident a good thing since it led to a relationship with a human and getting back their home. Rowan then spoke to Loki, reminding him that they are not interested in the outside world and that they are trying to limit their exposure for the safety of their people. Admitting her fault for not recognizing Loki's lust to venture into the outside world, Rowan asked Loki if he really was sorry for the danger he caused by his actions. When Loki responded that he understood the repercussions of his actions, Rowan then banished Loki from their place, which puzzled Loki. Turning serious, Rowan told Loki that there was no reason for him to stay in their paradise if he found it very boring. If Loki wished to experience the outside world, Rowan made it clear that they would not stop him. Wishing that Loki would enjoy the excitement of the outside world to his heart's content, she made it clear he was no longer welcome in the place he called boring. Even though Loki apologized and hoped that Rowan did not mean what she said, Rowan was stern with her decision, since an apology was not enough for almost killing them all. Loki was then told that he should be grateful that they are a peaceful people and wouldn't execute him. Loki still wouldn't own up to his actions, believing that what he did was a harmless prank, even though he was repeatedly warned by the other fairies. To ensure the safety of their home and that of the others, Rowan made his final decision and banished Loki from their home. She sternly informed Loki that crawling back to them would not help, as they would kick him out by force. Frustrated, Loki called Rowan out for being the oldest, saying that she wouldn't have any authority if their parents were with them. Not liking Loki's words, all of the fairies threw everything they could grab at Loki, casting him out of their paradise. Still believing that everyone did not mean what they said, Loki looked at Touji. Tears in his eyes, Loki approached Touji, begging for help since Touji was the one who defeated the fairy eater. Believing that Touji is a nice guy, Loki asked Touji to tell the others not to abandon him. Touji did not want to get involved in Loki's mess and believed that Loki should suffer the consequences of his actions. When Touji told Loki that he only helped them out because they made a deal, Loki then also tried to make a deal with Touji. However, they were interrupted by Rowan, telling Loki not to involve Touji with his punishment and making it clear that it was her final warning. Mad, Loki left his home after telling everyone that they are all a bunch of ingrates. Although Loki finally left, the other fairies remained silent and did not show any happy emotion. Touji didn't know if it was his place to say anything about the whole thing, as he believed that the matter was between the fairies and, as an outsider, he should just leave it at that. When Touji left the fairy paradise, he learned how to create ultra-pure water and even the method to cultivate fairy berries on his own. The fairies gave Touji a sample bucket of water, plus a sapling so he wouldn't have to keep coming back. The fairies had also been collecting coins, jewels, and other stuff dropped by humans. For the fairies, it was just cluttering up the forest. Since fairies really don't have any use for money and stuff, Touji felt it was a bonus for him for all his hard work. Touji admitted that the whole adventure was more trouble than he thought, but since everything ended well, he did not pay any more attention. While on their way back, Touji noticed a drop item on the ground. Drop items can occur even if Touji is not specially involved, such as another adventurer killing a monster, or when two creatures fight each other. Touji was puzzled when the items he saw were from a fairy. Since he didn't see a corpse anywhere, Touji believed that Loki had been dealt with by his karma. Arriving back at his home, Touji didn't expect that obtaining the ingredients would take about 2 weeks or half a month. Touji left Pochi in charge of cleaning up the hotel room while he went over to the Albert family Chamber of Commerce, after receiving a message from Meyer, saying that she really needed to see him fast about some kind of business. When Touji finally met with Meyer, she showed him 3 huge pouches filled with coins. Meyer explained that the money was Touji's portion for the potion stock they sold. Meyer asked Touji if he still remembered the monster stampede he participated in, and revealed that it wasn't only the city of Sarto that was involved. The city of William was next to them when Meyer learned that the city was endangered by the stampede, which gave Meyer a good opportunity to do some business. Following Touji's example of selling cheap to the adventurers who were injured during the stampede, Meyer's business increased as many of the adventurers residing in the city of William were pretty banged up. As Touji remembered, some of the adventurers who are in Sarto now came from William. The reason they moved was because the monster population decreased over in William, which meant there were fewer monster subjugation requests. Touji believed that the cause of the problem was once again the Hero Party, which wiped out the monster population to increase their levels. Because of their actions, they caused an adventurer shortage in the area. Touji was baffled upon realizing that the Hero Party did not just participate in the monster stampede, they were also destabilizing the local ecosystems and economics. Meyer shares the same thoughts as Touji about the heroes from Dapuri. After recklessly overhunting the monsters, causing them to stampede towards other nations, the so-called heroes didn't even bother to check on the consequences of their actions. The heroes simply ignored the mess they made, continued to increase their levels, and went inside the dungeon in Dapuri. Touji wonders if the heroes of Dapuri realize how much they're damaging the local ecosystem, and if they are even aware that they were the cause of the stampede. Touji believes that they are not worthy of being called heroes as they haven't done anything heroic. To justify the heroes' actions, Meyer learned that the king of Dapuri is still pushing the propaganda. Disappointed that the king released another volume, Touji was a little bit happy since he could use more scrap paper. Meyer doesn't know if the people of Dapuri believe what is written in the book, but she is curious why the book is being sold in Salto. Although curious, Touji does not really care about the book's contents as he just uses it for strengthening his enhancement skills. Ending their discussion about the heroes of Dapuri, Touji informed Meyer that he has a whole new stock of manufactured goods to sell. He then asked Meyer if she was interested in selling them, to which Meyer responded that she was. Curious about how much stuff Touji was going to unload for the day, Meyer was shocked to see many crates being piled up. Initially surprised, Meyer then told herself that she shouldn't be surprised anymore since she was doing business with Touji. Aside from swords and weapons, Touji asked Meyer if she also buys armor and accessories. After dumping all the items Touji made, Meyer couldn't believe the quantity Touji produced, but was even more amazed at the high quality of the items. Believing that even the nobles would spend their fortunes to purchase one of Touji's items. Meyer couldn't believe that Touji made armor that could automatically adjust its size to fit the user. Guessing that all the armor is enhanced the same way, Meyer believes that the value of the armor has increased even more since they won't have to custom fit anything. So instead of making weapons and potions, Touji learned that he could also make money by making armor and accessories. Touji believes that he can earn a lot by focusing on items that can be used by C-ranked adventurers and above. While establishing a new type of deal with Meyer, Touji then told her that he has one more special item in his inventory. Receiving the sword Touji made, Meyer was curious if it was a sword with attribute enhancement. After checking the strength level of the sword, Meyer couldn't believe that Touji made a sword that is on the level of a master-grade magic sword. The sword Touji made is a medium-level magic sword, a one-handed sword imbued with a latent ability. Sighing, Meyer once again told herself and Touji that she shouldn't be surprised by him anymore. Touji was impressed that Meyer was able to calm down quickly. Realizing that Touji does not know the implications of the weapon he made, Meyer explained that if the creator stacks the strength points, the user will get a 15% increase in strength level. That by itself puts the sword into the medium-grade magic weapon category. The crappy sword Touji saw in William was only worth 5 million kettles. Touji never thought that putting a triple latent ability in one category could raise the value of the sword by so much. Meyer informed Touji that the medium-grade sword was too much and could not be sold through her normal channels. Meyer needed to bring the sword to her father so he could decide how to process it. The sword Touji made is normally found in demonic areas or in a dungeon. Meyer suggests professionally appraising the sword to check its performance. A weapon's latent potential is dependent on the level of the user. The higher the user's stats, the higher the increase. If one knows their exact stat figure, they can calculate how much of a boost they can get. There are people in the world who can measure those stats called magic equipment appraisers. Since the sword only has a 15% increase in strength points, Touji thinks that it isn't necessary to have the sword professionally appraised. Hearing Touji, Meyer became curious as to why he thinks it isn't necessary. Reminding Meyer that he is the one who made the sword, Meyer felt frustrated after learning that Touji has another ability that he isn't telling her. In the end, Touji and Meyer went with the cover story that the sword was found in a dungeon. Since it was so valuable, the sword couldn't be sold privately, so Meyer's father decided to put it up for auction at a later date. As for the rest of the stuff Touji made, he plans to observe if it would sell well to the Adventurers Guild and private buyers. Since Touji's own stats are basically bog standard, he believes having enhanced equipment is necessary, and making enhanced equipment costs a lot of money. Touji still had to make a living and needed to earn as much as he could whenever he had the opportunity. Seeing a mysterious door, Touji asked Galeo and Pochi if they added a door to the room. Touji believes that it would not be possible for Galeo and Pochi to add the door, since there are no signs of construction. Curious, Touji asked if they had tried opening the door before. When both Galeo and Pochi shook their heads, Touji decided to check what was inside. Seeing a spiral staircase, Touji remembered something terrible and asked Pochi to make a batch of his pancakes as they needed some bait. Fanning the scent of the food towards the special room, a familiar face suddenly appeared, eager to taste something sweet. Touji's guess was correct, and he immediately ordered Galeo to not let the woman get away. Galeo successfully trapped the core of the dungeon under the tablecloth. Throwing a fit, the woman wished to be freed as she wanted to eat the food Pochi made. After asking the woman to calm down, Touji promised that he would let her eat some pancakes if she quieted down. After following Touji's instructions, the woman then asked to be released. Hesitant, Touji wonders why the core of the dungeon was in his home. That is the end of the recap for now. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.